Yeah. I'll go ahead and call the February 25th, 2026 meeting of the Southeastern Public Service Authority to order. And the first thing of business would be to stand and have a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Madam Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
Is there anyone participating electronically? Mr. Stanton, are you there?
Does not appear.
Okay, so Mr. Stanton is not there at this time. Is there anybody registered to make a public comment?
No one has registered to make a public comment in person or electronically.
Okay. Under some general comments, a little bit later on, our executive director will introduce our new deputy executive director. Thinking about the board appointments, we're still waiting for the governor appointees for Chesapeake and Franklin. I'm sure they're working on it. It can be a bit of a tedious process. And as everybody knows, we had some incredibly severe weather in the last month, and our trash bash, which is a annual evening of fun and recognition of all of our service members, had to be rescheduled from, I guess it was January 28th to March 28th. And so I think at your desk you have a new invitation. I really would hope you'd be able to find time on your schedules to drop by. It's a wonderful evening. Get to see and recognize all the members who work so hard to keep, to fulfill our mission and allow the, take all of the waste from the jurisdictions and really contribute to the health, safety, and welfare of our community, as well as the beauty of our community. And that is going to be really right here at a hotel behind the...
Right behind us.
Right behind us, so pretty good access. The only other comment I would have is that, you know, we did have, I would mention, we had this really severe weather in the last month. Schools were closing, some of the communities and our members were closing, but if our members were picking up waste, SPSA was collecting it from the transfer stations, and really give a hats off to the staff for always delivering in any kind of weather, any kind of emergency, any kind of threat. So the next thing we would do is move on to approve the minutes. They've all been distributed. I did review them and I find them in order, but we're willing to hear from anybody else if you thought there was any corrections or anything like that. If not, I'd take I'd consider a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Mr. Broad moved. Mr. Moore second. I think he did. He was a little first, I guess. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion, corrections for the minutes? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, Mr. Parnell was not here, so he's abstaining. I learned last time, though, that you don't actually have to abstain. Yeah, you can, obviously, but yeah, I didn't either till last month. I thought if you weren't here, but if you read the minutes and they sound good to you, you can vote for them. So anyway, thank you very much. So we're moving right along, and obviously we are going to have hopefully a very short meeting today, because we're then going to move into lunch and our orientation for our new board members. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to our executive director, Mr. Bagley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I saw our general counsel cringe over there when you said we're going to have a short meeting and then go into orientation, because orientation is actually part of the meeting and for public notice reasons. So we'll go directly into it after we finish the business.
It's not the first time I've been wrong, and it won't be the last.
So first, I'd like to ask our Director of HR to come to the podium and for the first slide.
Good morning, everyone. So SPSA conducted a national search for our Deputy Executive Director candidates. There were a total of 21 applications that were received. The selection committee held both in-person and virtual interviews to accommodate applications needs, because we did have some out-of-state applicants. Second interviews were held with the top 2 candidates, and the selection committee unanimously selected Kyle Strickland. Kyle comes to us with a degree in environmental science and 20 years working in environmental with HRSD and DEQ. He is strong, charismatic. He has a strong, charismatic presence and the immediate readiness to immerse himself in SPSA's day-to-day operations. He's a very engaging leader, and he leads with a people-first and relationship-driven approach in order to build trust and drive results. So we are glad to welcome Kyle Strickland.
I'd also like to add that the selection committee consists of myself, Sandy Schreiber, our CFO, Cam Smith from HR, and Michael Pons. Michael, stand up in the back. Michael Pons is our safety manager. And I think we had a good cross-section of the staff that was on that selection committee. And when it was all said and done, we did second interviews for the top 2 candidates, and when it was all said and done, it was automatic that we had selected Kyle. And Kyle, if you'd like to say anything, you certainly feel free to do so.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Bagley. Just thank the board and SPSA for an opportunity to come work for such a wonderful organization. I'm well familiar with SPSA, having lived and grown up in this area my entire life, and I'm excited about the innovation that SPSA is doing right now, and happy to be a part of helping serve our neighbor communities. Thank you.
So if you did not get a chance to meet Kyle prior to the meeting, please, before you leave, get with him and just introduce yourself. I appreciate that. Thank you. Next, our communications manager to come to the podium.
All right, good morning, everyone. I wanted to keep it short again with the potential longer meeting time, but at the same time, I wanted to start with something fun here. Although maybe it's not fun because he is still on the loose. He is wanted, Leon Luther. He also goes by Lithium Ion and all of his little friends. They are rechargeable batteries, and we need to make sure we're keeping them out of the trash. Also keeping them out of the recycling bins. As we go into the future with AWD and being able to put more things into our trash, we also need to recognize those things that we still cannot put into our trash. And batteries are a prime example. There's just so many rechargeable devices and batteries out there, and we don't want our residents just putting them into the trash thinking that SPSA can take care of it. We can take care of it, but we need those to be dropped off. And that's at our HHW sites. We have those all over the area. There's all sorts of different events throughout the year. And so batteries fall into that category, your household chemicals, your larger e-waste items. I'm sure you're not going to mistakenly put your old television into your trash. Bring that into us and bring those batteries into us too. So February 18 was National Battery Day. And again, batteries are exploding and doing all sorts of amazing things, but we just want to keep in mind that when you're done with your battery, when it's run its course, we can't just be putting those into the trash. And so there's that education element that we, in addition to a lot of the public works departments, are trying to work on, because as you can see in that picture, they love to start fires, they love to rub against things, and we just want to keep those out of the trash. So definitely take that with you today, and anyone watching, a lot of good information on our website too that you can find. Moving on,
I have one question on that.
Yes,
Maybe
yes,
you
sir.
comment. So I did some air, I was traveling by air last week and got asked a question. Do you have any lithium-ion batteries in your checked luggage? And I started to say no, but then thought about it. I said, well, I wasn't sure. And then I got to my destination, got on my laptop, did a little looking, and turned out that your electric razor has lithium-ion batteries. If you have, in my wife's case, she has a cordless curling iron. That's a lithium-ion battery. And we have one of these little vacuum things that vacuum the air down from these collapsible storage folders, and that has lithium-ion batteries. So I figured that out, but now what would we do with those? They're not, these devices can't come apart. How would we get the lithium-ion batteries to recycle? Would you just give you the razor and give you the whole
yeah,
thing?
I would bring that whole device in. That would, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great point because, again, anything rechargeable, there's so many rechargeable things. We're going into that rechargeable age now, and those types of batteries, that type of technology, not good for the trash. Any batteries you can bring to us, even the single-use ones, but specifically those rechargeable ones have been the greatest hazard. As far as updates, the month of February, we are starting to see a lot of growth, and that really started with the acceptance testing, which we'll talk about. We put out a press release with some of those results. We were very excited with what AMP was showing, and Dennis and I believe some of our engineers will talk about that. In addition to that, we launched our social media follower campaign, and this dealt with 2 posts on Facebook that talked about, the first one, how AI is now capable of sorting through, well, really sorting for recyclables, but how we're using that in our solid waste disposal system. And that created just a whole lot of interest and comments, and that post, in addition to another one, gave our Facebook page there like a 400% increase in our followers. And what that turns into is any post we make going forward is just that much, it's seen by that much more people. We're getting that much more reach, and that's really important as we're starting to put out more information here. And that kind of segues into that transparency dashboard development that I'm starting to develop now. As we start to release and talk about that, we're just getting more people to see it. And so that transparency dashboard, that's just talking about what the new system is doing, all the data that's happening at AMP, the organic diversion that they're doing, the recycling diversion, and doing that breakdown of all those recyclables they're able to take out of the trash. So we're excited to be able to build our audience on social media because there's a lot of exciting things in the future. And then March and April, those are just some of our events, our public appearances, sort of. A lot of them are presentations, doing maybe a longer form of what I'm doing now and what Dennis has done with you all, of just talking about some of the things that we are doing at SPSA and the future that we're taking solid waste into. And I guess chief among them is the April 2nd ribbon cutting that AMP is doing at the Frederick facility. And you all got the save the date recently, and an invite will be coming soon, and I'm sure Dennis will talk more about that. So I'll leave room for any questions here, but that's about all I got for you. Thank you.
I do want to add one thing to the battery slide that we were talking about earlier. In the upcoming budget, there's going to need to be an increase in disposal revenue for batteries. We have about a $4,000 budget for disposal of batteries, and that was the old D-cell batteries, AA, AAA. Well, the first quarter of this year, we spent $4,000 because of the lithium-ion batteries cost more to get rid of, and we're seeing more and more and more of those batteries. And it's important that we do invest in that, because the 2 fires we had in the landfill last year were both attributed to lithium-ion batteries, and those fires cost us way more than what it's going to cost us to get rid of them. So it's a transferring money from fighting fires to preventing fires, really. So just want to make that clear, because these lithium-ion batteries are an issue, not just with us, but every other organization that manages waste in the whole country. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the first update is on the WSSA, the Waste Supply and Service Agreement. Testing for the first ramp up of the Frederick facility, which is about 54,000 tons per year, was completed on the 29th of January. And our resident engineer is here today to go through that. He was present at the entire test, and he'll give you a thorough report on that. We'll talk more if you have any questions. Second milestone is 108,000 tons that will start on July 1. And I want to be clear about this. They really could do this now. They have 2 shifts set up at AMP. But the problem is, when we had the contract, kind of putting the contract together, we needed to know what the ramp schedule was going to be so we would know how to charge our member communities as we ramped up. And the first ramp schedule was for January, and the second ramp schedule was for July 1st. So while they could take the additional 54,000 tons today, we can't afford to take it to them because the money's not in the budget until July. So we're kind of in a catch-22. They're ready, but we're not. We don't have the funds to do it because we funded it based on the original schedule, which was just a tentative schedule in the contract. Work at the Victory Boulevard Station is underway. We're doing a lot of our work that we're required to do under the contract, and some of the longer-term items that AMP is going to install is on order at this point. We meet weekly, going through all of the requirements that each of the 2 parties have under the contract and giving updates on where we are. So I'm very pleased with the progress for that. We reviewed the copies of the offtake agreements for carbon credits, and those agreements have now been completely finalized with a third party that's purchasing those credits. AMP ribbon cutting is on April the 2nd. I hope that each of you will try to put that on your calendar, and if at all possible, be present for that. It's going to be a pretty large event. The governor has been invited. A lot of state level delegates are going to be there, hopefully, and we'd certainly like for all of you all to be there to witness this ribbon cutting, because it's going to change the way waste is managed in the whole entire United States. Are there any questions on the Waste Supply and Service Agreement? Okay. The next item is House Bill 86. It's a mattress recycling legislation. We are looking at this very closely. Crossover Day was on the 18th, last Wednesday. This particular piece of legislation was introduced last year and did make it out of committee. This year, it was passed pretty much along party lines, a 67-30 vote. It was turned over to the Senate and went into committee for the Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources. That was yesterday. It was heard in committee. Kind of the speculation is that it's going to pass this year and that it will be signed by the governor. And if it does, it'll be an opportunity for us. And we've been watching this, and we're ready to begin to really dig into this and bring back to you next month a more thorough plan to how to handle this. But essentially what this legislation does is it establishes a mattress stewardship program. Mattresses are a real problem for the landfill. We can put one mattress in the landfill, and it could drop a bulldozer in the shop for 2 days trying to get all of the wire from the springs out from the final drives. So lots of times people don't want to take mattresses. We refuse to take mattresses. We get them every now and then now in a load, but they're a real issue. And nobody knows what to do with them, and there's not really a way to recycle them at this point. So what this will do will essentially work like the tire, currently the way the tires are handled. If you buy a new set of tires, you have to pay a deposit on the tires, and you have to leave the tires with the tire dealership, and then the tire dealership then takes the money that you've paid them, and they pay somebody to recycle those tires or get rid of them. This legislation is set up in a similar kind of fashion. Anyone that sells mattresses will be required to have a certified company that's considered a certified mattress recycler to handle those used mattresses. And a certified mattress recycler will be certified by DEQ, and then DEQ will certify that everybody that sells mattresses has a contract to do that. So there's quite a bit of work that has to happen from DEQ standpoint. So this legislation would not go into effect until July 1 of 2027. So because of the problems that we have with mattresses currently, there's a large market out there for this. We're looking at, does this make sense for us to be one of those certified mattress recyclers? The answer to the question, I don't know. It's going to be yes or it's going to be no. But we're doing the research now, and Kyle Strickland will be coming back to you with a presentation at our next meeting on what we recommend doing with this legislation. And that's assuming that it does get passed, which we do believe that it will. So if there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer it, or any concerns. Yes, sir.
I do have a question. Oh, Mr. Moore first.
Yeah, I want us to consider what happens to these mattresses, and even like tires too, when there's no place to take them. I can tell you where they end up a lot of times is on the back roads of our larger communities. So not only I know you have an issue with the equipment here at transfer station, but if we don't have a place to take them, I can guarantee where they end up. See, you know, I lived it. So please think about the bigger picture of the communities and what happens if we don't have a place to take them. So if there's an opportunity for SPSA to be involved, to be part of that answer, I would encourage it.
And I don't want, LJ, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. I know that in our special pickups, they do pick up mattresses. So, but in my ignorance, what happens to it after you guys pick them up?
I'm gonna defer to Virginia Beach's alternate over there, and I'm sure he's anxious that I'm putting him on the spot, so.
I couldn't wait for this moment. Good morning, everybody. So currently we, and I hate to say this in front of Dennis, but we take all the mattresses to the transfer station, the ones that we pick up on the bulky collection. And then we also receive mattresses at the city landfill. So we understand the problem all too well.
So you're exactly, and that's what we see too. And we actually try to use those mattresses as brooms on the tip floor. You can take them with the front end loader, close them up on it, and then use them to sweep the floor. And that's until they're worn completely out, and then they go in and they come one at a time. The real problem here is back to what Mr. Moore was talking about. We are working with the Navy now. The Navy wants us to take 2,500 mattresses at our landfill, and we're saying you've bumped your head. We're not taking 2,500 mattresses at the landfill. But they're stacked up, and we've got pictures of them. They're just stacked up, and that's what's happening currently. And you're absolutely right. It's not the Navy necessarily, but some of these mattress stores that pick up the mattresses, they'll stack them up, and then they'll get rid of them one or two or three at a time, just like you're talking about. And that's part of the reason why SPSA got involved with the tire shredding at finally, because it became a problem. And I can tell you that I was on the other side of this back when it first started, and the tire dumps were everywhere. You rarely see a tire dump anymore because there's still some out there, don't get me wrong, but not like it used to be, because there's a place now to get rid of them. And that's the problem with mattresses. So that's part of the reason why we're interested in this legislation and how we can make sure that we can do it and keep the cost down for our member communities. Thank you for the input. So upcoming budget items, FY27 budget, I'm going to include a few recommendations. First of all, an increase in the municipal tip fee. You already know this. You've seen the tip fee schedule of $6 for municipal customers to pay for the 108,000 tons that are going to be processed at the Frederick Boulevard facility. Increase in the commercial rate. We've been trying to bring the commercial rate up to where it should be based on the increases that we're seeing from our third-party disposal contractors and third-party haulers. We're still waiting on some numbers back from them to see what the number's going to be this year, and we'll be able to tell you what that increase is going to be, but I would tell you that it's likely to be about $4 or $5 a ton for the increase in the cost. And then we are looking to implement a tiered approach for contract commercial rate. Currently, we have a minimum rate of 30,000 tons. If you sign a contract with us for 30,000 tons, that you will bring us 30,000 tons of waste, then you get a lower rate than the posted contract rate of $78 a ton. We've had some questions about people who want to get in the waste business who say that that's a big difference in $64 a ton or $62 a ton and $78 a ton. They think this kind of, it's an unlevel playing field. So what we've looked at doing is having tiered approach to have another rate if you guarantee it, and we have a contract with you to bring 10,000 tons, and then a little bit lower rate if it's 20,000 tons, and then the 30,000 tons, it'd be just like it is currently. So I think this answers part of that problem, and Brett has looked at this, and we'll be working on developing contracts so that if the board elects to move forward with this, when we bring the budget back to you, that those contracts will be ready to go into place. One of the concerns that our CFO has brought to us is that if somebody agrees to bring 10,000 tons, then they're going to go from $78 a ton that they're currently paying, say, down to $74 a ton or $72 a ton, and there's going to be a loss in revenue. But the other side of that is if they guarantee to bring 10,000 tons and they were only bringing 2,000 tons previous to that, then we're still going to make more revenue. So there are pros and cons to this, and we'll be prepared to discuss that. But I don't want to throw something on you when we bring the budget back without you having an opportunity to think about it. Get back with us. Let's talk about it. This is a good idea for a lot of reasons, but not to say that this is the answer to all the problems we have with the tip fee schedule for commercial. But we'll have more discussions as we move forward. Yes, sir.
So Dennis, we obviously, based on your current data, there are probably some people who exceed 10,000, so they'll get a lower rate, and there are some that exceed 20,000, they'll get a lower rate. Are you going to, I'm sure you'll evaluate that as you prepare the budget, right?
We've already evaluated that, and the CFO came back, and that's where these numbers came from, is that she figured on the number of tons they were currently bringing versus what they would be bringing under this, and looked at the difference in revenue, and there was a decrease in revenue, but that was under the assumption that some of those folks would go to 10,000 tons and get the lower rate. If they do, we're still going to be okay, but none of them, if I'm going to defer back to Sandy, but I don't think any of those customers that are non-contract were bringing more than 10,000 tons. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. I was actually surprised when I pulled them that most of our non-contract customers are really bringing a minimal amount. So we're hoping that these numbers encourage them to bring more to us.
And that's our hope too, is that there are some folks that don't bring waste to us because it's $78 a ton and they have more than 10,000 tons, but if they can get a contract for 10,000 tons and the rate goes down, then we become competitive. So we're going to see some new customers, and that's really our hope in all of this. Are there any other questions or comments? All right. So our leachate concentrator is up and running, and I put the numbers from last month on and the numbers from this month on the same page. You can see kind of what's going on with the concentrator. Last month we brought in 1.4 million, 1,461,000 gallons. This month the throughput was 1,390,000 gallons. The daily average was 48,731 last month. This month it was 44,865. And the weekly, I'm not going to go through that. You can see that the numbers kind of match up. The uptime previously was 90%. The uptime this month was 91%. The pump and haul gallons last month were 197,000 gallons, and the pump and haul this month was 4,486 gallons. Some of the data that showed that probably question you have about the data is the throughput. Depending on the quality of the leachate will dictate how much leachate you can put through through the machine. If there's a more sediment in the leachate, then the numbers typically go down. That's why you're seeing we had more hours of operation this month, but we had less throughput, and that's the reason. It's dictated by the quality of the leachate. But as you can see, the pump and haul numbers are going to go up and down based on the weather and based on how much rain we've put into the ponds. So we're looking at some ways to decrease the amount of rainwater going into the ponds so that we can be more consistent with the amount that we pump and haul. Are there any questions regarding the leachate concentrator and the numbers we're seeing now? I think we'll continue this for a couple more meetings because we have some engineering folks on the board that I think it's important that they understand what we're seeing in terms of data. Flyover update, the project is on budget. I just had a meeting. Norman and I met with VDOT last Tuesday for our monthly meeting. The bridge concrete's being poured this week and next week. That's a big part of the project. The LDCC placement on both the eastbound and the westbound ramps is now complete. They've put dirt on the exterior, and they're seeding that, trying to get some stabilization of that soil. Base for the merge road is complete. That's the kind of the big circular road that cuts back and comes back into 58, and then one lane will go directly into the landfill. That base is complete, and it's just about ready for asphalt whenever they're ready to put it down. There's two 18-inch raw water valves that have to be replaced or installed, actually, as part of the project. They're looking to do that the week of 3/2. VDOT and the contractor tentatively project that wheels on the road by July the 15th of this year. That's not completion. That's not having all the shrubbery put up and all the extra signage that we've requested to be put up, but wheels on the road July the 15th and substantial completion around September the 15th. VDOT engineers will be here to brief the board next month. I've asked them to keep it short and stick strictly with budget and change orders, so hopefully that will go well next month. This construction schedule, you can see, this is just this is a rendering that I pulled from the report to show you that they're remaining on schedule. Again, the green line is the target schedule date. The red line is if you're 10% behind schedule, and then the black line is the actual progress. And for the month of January, they are consistent with where they were last month. And again, they think they're going to be at substantial completion in September. Here's kind of a drone footage of the bridge crossing 58. It's come a long way. You can see it's kind of looking close to being, it's getting there. It's not close to being finished, but it's close. It's closer than it was when we started anyway. I can't wait for it to get open and be done with the project, but it's really a massive project.
Can't wait for it.
Yeah, right, and Suffolk's drivers. All right, cell 7 construction update. Time of year restrictions were lifted. Time of year restrictions were lifted on 2/15. That's the restrictions on the long-eared bat mating period, and you can't take trees out during that period. It was lifted on 2/15, and we started logging again on 2/16, right, Norman? Try to get the rest of the trees down. We got about half of the trees down that we needed to get down prior to the time of year restrictions going into place, and now we'll finish that up now. You have something, Norman, on that? Okay. We have approximately 490,000 cubic yards of soil that remain to be excavated before we can put down the geomembrane. Soil removal has slowed due to weather conditions. It's been extremely wet, and we're deep enough that when the soil's coming out, you got wet soil coming out, it's going into an area where you can't stack it because it's wet. So we're really having a lot of problems getting the soil out. At this point, we think that's going to improve over the next couple of weeks. with some of the things that we're doing to try to dry out some of the soil. We're working with our engineers and with the contractor to try to come up with some creative ways to make sure we can continue to move soil. But while they're not moving soil, the crews are continuing to work on things. We got leachate pipe they're welding and putting in place. So there's a lot of things they're still doing. They're not stopping work, but they're not necessarily being able to pull any soil out at this point. Contractor is looking at a July completion date. This is really a moving target at this point. I'm only giving you a general number that we're hearing from them, but they're not holding themselves to that number because of the weather and all the other things that we're dealing with. But July, August is still going to be where we expected to be at anyway. Here's a picture of the excavation this month versus last month, and the one thing that my eyes automatically go to when I look at this picture is not the excavation, but the landfill that's behind it. You can see how much where we are based on cells 1 through 4 in the back of the picture on the right-hand side. You see that's 200 feet, and the landfill directly behind the excavated area is 5 and 6, where we're currently working, getting close to being full. And August is that we're going to have a thorough report on our airspace analysis later, but August is right around the corner, and that's the current time frame for being at capacity on cells 5 and 6. So this is really cutting it close, but our engineer is here today to give you some reporting on the airspace. January municipal tons were below budgeted numbers. That's it's nothing to be alarmed about, because we're following the same track we do every year. January is always a month in the year where we have low tonnages. We expect probably March timeframe will be well above the green line, and you'll see in a minute we're still on target overall for the year to be on budget. Commercial tons for January, still the same thing, still under budget, but we expect that to also increase. And we're following the same line on the graph that we followed for the last 5 years here as well. The municipal tons year to date are still, the blue line is how much above budgeted amount we are. The yellow line is 262,675 tons is what we've budgeted at this point. We're actually at 277,837 tons for municipal. Commercial, we're more on target. We're just 300 tons above what we budgeted for. So we're very hopeful that that number will begin to show a little bit more blue in it as we go forward through the rest of the fiscal year. All right, and at this time, I'll ask Bob to come up and give you a report on the airspace study. Turn on your mic, please.
Good morning. I think I last presented in the summer regarding the airspace report for the landfills. We do this on a quarterly basis and do surveys. As you know, other than your people, your landfill airspace is probably one of your most important resources that you have, and managing that resource is very important. So the report I'm going to present today presents through December of 2025 what the remaining capacity of the landfill is. I know there are a couple of new board members, so I thought I would give some explanation, a little bit of background that might be helpful. At the landfill, we have an existing permit, and when waste ceased operations, it created a challenge, and that challenge was you were bringing in more waste, a higher volume of material coming into the landfill. So we initiated several initiatives to modify the permit in order to try to maximize the available capacity that you have at the landfill. We did that both on 5 and 6. And then we went and looked at cell 7 as a way to use the same concepts that we had come up with on cells 5 and 6, plus some additional design changes on the base grade of the landfill to modify those grades. And so today I'll talk a little bit about, you'll hear the term existing permitted capacity and Dennis already referenced that in terms of the August timeframe for the existing permitted capacity to be completed, but also refer to the modified capacity, and that's going to be an important number because that gives you a little bit more room to work. So under the current summary of the current permitted capacity, as Dennis indicated, as of December 2025, we estimate in the August timeframe for that capacity to be reached. Cell 7, then 8 and 9 are additional information just for your use that will come online later on. More importantly is not only the existing permitted capacity, but the estimated life that we give for the changes that we propose to DEQ. So we're estimating that based upon the configuration changes that we've made, both for cells 5 and 6 and cell 7, that we would ultimately get ourselves probably an additional 5 years, 5.5 years of life on both of those areas. And so that's significant. That'll be very helpful. The additional capacity that we're getting in 5 and 6 is not easy to get, as we talked about at our last meeting. It's that what we call a sliver fill, where you're taking and we're changing some of the outside configuration of the landfill in terms of to build a bigger base, to remove some of the benches that we had that were built in there, and we will then make use of that space. And I have some drawings a little bit later if you want to, we have time to take a look at those as to what that means. But that basically is trying to find as much space as we can in order to continue to provide disposal capacity at the landfill. And I'll also note this particular point, that these numbers are conservative with respect to ultimately what will happen on the diversion issue. So this is kind of the under current estimates at this juncture. Once AMP's facilities come online, those numbers are going to, I think, change pretty substantially. So we'll report on that later. As I indicated, the modifications that we had proposed and that are being considered, and we have temporary authorization to do this, by the way, is to eliminate those terraces, go to 3-to-1 slopes, install tack-on berms. So for example, at the Virginia Beach landfill, where we did this, where we went ahead and filled the slopes and we put on tack-on berms versus building those berms and consuming that airspace while you're building the landfill. As I indicated, that the draft permits have been issued in terms of under review. We anticipate in the next probably week or two, we'll have comments back to DEQ with regards to the permit modifications. The process there will go after they get our final comments on the permit. It will then go to public notice, and there's a 30-day period. You'll have a public hearing, and after which then DEQ will issue the permit. We're anticipating that probably in mid this year that will happen. So we're on track for that.
Bob, could you go back though with that and say again, we've got temporary authorization to proceed back from DEQ because they know the situation that we're in.
That's correct. So we're able to continue that. That temporary authorization is through July 22nd, I believe, of this year. And if it comes to a place where we need to extend that, DEQ is pretty cooperative and we can work through any kind of changes that need to happen. But I anticipate that we'll be able to get through the next processes of the permit modification, the public hearings, notification, comments, and then the issuing of the permit. That should be pretty straightforward at this juncture. There's no disagreements at this point with DEQ on the material parts of the permit.
And Bob, I wanted to confirm the years of remaining life were based on that we were landfilling 100% of our municipal waste.
That's correct.
Obviously, if we are only sending half of that, given our future efforts
That's right.
with
It's going to extend it out substantially.
Yes. Okay.
It's a conservative estimate. We do that on purpose at this juncture until the facilities are actually in place and we can count on them to being operational. This is a cross-section just to show the elimination of the terraces. Again, you're building a bigger base, so we're able to get that additional capacity as you build out the landfill. And so that's very helpful. And these concepts, again, are being carried forward into cell 7, and those modifications have been included in the permit modification for cell 7 as well.
For cell 7, that's, Bob, can you go back to that previous? For cell 7, it's a lot easier to build that slope than it is to go back to 5 and 6 where you've already has the benches and you're only filling in a little sliver of land. That's where the challenge really lies.
It really is. And that's why we went ahead and made the modifications to cell 7 now, so that you have the ability to do that as you go forward versus having to come in later on and fill. So here's the big picture in terms of the numbers. In terms of capacity, they kind of relate back to the years, but I put the years because most people can think better in terms of years versus all these millions of cubic yards and what that ultimately means. Something important to remember is the density issue. If you recall, during the time when wind waste was operational, we had densities of upwards of 2,000 pounds per cubic yard of material going into your landfill, so very dense material. When you're putting municipal solid waste, unprocessed material, you're talking somewhere between 1,400 and 1,500 pounds per cubic yard, so a pretty substantial decrease in the density, and so that consumes your landfill space quicker. And so these volume numbers are important in those calculations. We've assumed a longer-term density of 1,500, a shorter-term density of 14, because when sliver fill, your operations are a little more constrained and it's more difficult to compact. So we've assumed a little more conservative on that at this juncture. So that's it on the air capacity report. I have other slides that I'm not going to go through today. Do you want me to go ahead and discuss the?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so let's move forward on the performance test. Okay. So what I would like to talk to you next about is the summary of the performance test. As Dennis indicated, we provided independent engineering services with regards to the performance test. The performance test is one of the first key milestones on the service agreement with carbon sortation. And so we performed that during the period of time that Dennis had indicated. We were on site during the 3-day performance test, usually starting at 6 in the morning and going until sometimes 4 or 5 at night, depending on what was going on at the site. As you know, this particular facility is referenced as the Frederick Boulevard facility. It's the facility that is located adjacent to what was formerly RDS's material recovery facility. As you probably know, Carbon Sortation now owns that facility as well, and that's being ultimately going to be incorporated into their operations. So the performance test was conducted during the January 27th through January the 29th. And it really involved monitoring all the facility operations, including the throughput, the downtime, and material recovery. The facility demonstrated that it met the contractual obligations by successfully achieving all the minimum acceptance standards that are in the contract and confirming that the facility is in a ready position to process material from SPSA. And the involvement of our oversight provided, I think, an objective assessment of the facility's performance. And as I indicated, this was a critical milestone with regards to the contract. During the acceptance test, we processed about 170 tons of material per day. It ranged, and it demonstrated that their capacity for high volume processing operations. The test protocol involved tracking of inbound materials, deducting volumes that were unprocessable, and then keeping track of the recovered materials. And the recovered materials included what they call biochar eligible material. They also generated an RDF, which was being sent over to a facility in Baltimore for an incinerator, as well as mixed recyclables. And then you had the residuals that were also measured. So we confirmed those measurements. We would go to the scales with them and document. It would confirm that the scales had been calibrated in the process. We also logged the downtime of when the facility was either shut down for whatever reason, and they had very minimal amount of downtime. And the primary reason of the downtime was associated with their current processes where the biochar available material is being put into a truck, and they have to move that truck when it gets full. And so the downtime, they had to stop operations because they didn't want material to keep on flowing in. And so there's associated with that. And there were a couple of cases where the shredder also was having some challenges with the large amount of cardboard that was there for some reason. And so they're looking at some potential modifications associated with their shredder so that doesn't become an ongoing performance issue. This is a picture of the tip floor when it was empty. At the kind of the beginning of the day before material was being placed at the site. And then this is a picture of the tip floor when they had all the material. And so we would basically queue up the trucks, so we'd bring the material in generally ahead of time, and we would then bring those trailers. they're weighed and they're documented, and put that on the floor, and then we kind of start the clock at the beginning of the day with regards to then taking this material and processing it through the facility. There was also a process of removing non-processables. As you know, at SPSA's transfer stations, you do some pre-sorting to try to reduce the amount of material that ultimately is non-processable that comes to the facility, and that's been a commitment that SPSA has made to carbon sortation to do that. And so this was a picture at the end of the day of the non-processables. The way that works is the person who is operating the front-end loader, that person, as he's working the front-end loader, he would see it could be a propane tank, it could be a computer, it could be other bulky items, it could be ropes, big pieces of plastic. He would then pull those out and move them over to this pile. It was a pretty small pile. If I recall, it was something like 3,000 pounds. You know, it was really a small amount of material and almost de minimis when we looked at overall assessment operations. And so we would estimate this we'd weight it the first day, and then we'd estimate at the end of the day, the next 2 days, because it was so small. So the materials that we recovered, there's a picture that isn't shown here. We had both metals recovery, refuse-derived fuel, mixed recyclables, and the biochar available materials that were being generated. So they were taking the metals. One of the other challenges at the site with metals recovery was they had a lot of paper. As you can imagine, when you're in a mixed waste, you have, if the metal's wet, paper tends to stick to it, plastics stick to it. And so when it's going over the magnet, it takes both the paper and the plastic with it. So there's a fair amount of that was going into the metals. The impact for them is just they get a lower price on the metals recovery. The material is still going away from SPSA, so they're looking at ways. They're going to put some type of air separator, it looks like, on that process in order to help to remove the plastics and the paper from that in order to get a higher quality price on their metals. And as I indicated, the RDF materials was materials that they were able to sell as a refuse-derived fuel. Their ultimate hope in this regard is to generate what is called an SDF, which would be a solid-derived fuel, which is a higher quality fuel. The primary reason it's an RDF is when you have PVC in the RDF, that is a lower grade fuel because there's emissions associated with that. So they're hoping to have they're able in their process to get at the PVC. So if they can do that, they'll ultimately hopefully be able to generate a product that they could also sell for energy as well. And then the biochar material, those are the organic materials. Yes.
Also, if those items that are currently RDF, as there's a market that develops for those, for instance, black PET,
Yes.
They will pull that out, and now no longer be part of the RDF. It will be part of the marketable recyclable materials.
And that's the benefit of the process that is being put in place, is the flexibility in their ability to make changes based upon market conditions. So the big picture here is the summary results for the acceptance test. As indicated, about 170 tons per day, range between 169 to 174, depending on what was placed on the floor. The residue number there in the third column shows it was between roughly 47 to 53 tons per day of residue. Recyclable amounts were about 40 to 46 tons per day. The biochar eligible material would range between 78 to 70 to 82 tons per day. And as you can see that the diversion numbers were really high, range between 75 and 78%. The goal in the contract, as indicated in that the second to the last column, is 50%. So you can see we're substantially over the diversion targets. So in terms of our conclusion, both in terms of the performance test, is that they met their overall goals and what they were required to demonstrate.
Bob, could you explain residue, what residue is?
Sure. Residue is the material that would be coming to SPSA's landfill ultimately. It's the material that's left over after all the processing. So think of it now in terms of if you have a separate recycling collection, the mixed recyclables, that was under the recyclables column. That's the materials like the PET, the metal, the aluminum, and those kinds of materials are being pulled out. And so it's really kind of what is left over after everything is done and what ultimately would be coming to SPSA. So that's a big number. And you figure when you had the waste energy facility, you had diversion of these kinds of numbers from your waste energy facility as well. So that's good news, I think, with regards to the performance. So we ultimately concluded that the facility met its requirements And we have submitted our final report to SPSA on that, and they have received documentation from AMP and carbon sortation with regards to meeting that requirement. So that's a big milestone, a very important milestone for this particular contract. We did identify a couple of things, as I noted, during our observations. They're just that. They're just observations, and these are observations that they're aware of as well with regards to the downtime issue, and that's the sequencing of the trucks. They're looking at ways of potentially making that less of a downtime issue. And so they're looking at ways of doing that. If you've been out to the site, they've made some pretty nice beginning improvements of the facility in terms of the deck. When you come out to the site, it's less messy. And so they're working on just site cleanup, which I think is an important thing as well. They've got the biochar demonstration facility that they're constructing, and that should be testing sometime in the near future. There are some equipment changes that they're potentially going to do with regards to for example, the in-feed shredder. They're looking to potentially modify that to deal with the cardboard issue because these big pieces of cardboard in the shredder, it's clogging things up a bit, and they have to do some manual stuff to make that push through. So in our report, we provide some visual documentation of some of the performance test results. You can look at those at your leisure, and those are ultimately available. So any questions with regards to the performance test?
Was there a performance target for recycling as well?
No, the primary performance requirement was on diversion. So what was coming to SPSA?
We have a contract requirement on recycling percentage.
It's 20%.
20%, okay.
And what will happen ultimately at the former RDS facility, they're upgrading that facility to include a lot of the processing technology that they have into the current facility at Frederick as well. So that will take the mixed waste recyclables that are a byproduct of that facility they have demonstrated. That will then go into the infeed of the other process, as well as the facility that will be at Victory Boulevard will do the same thing in terms of processing the mixed waste recyclables.
So Bob, when it's all said and done and the biochar is not being landfilled in our landfill anymore, and they're just pretty much the residuals going back, you go ahead and comment a little bit about what is in that residual that is going back, and then would I be wrong assuming that's going to take us back to the more higher density fill when we're at that stage?
Yeah, the materials that are going in the residual are going to be fines, gravel, things that you can't process through it. So you have a 2-inch minus that a lot of that material is coming as residual, and then the other materials go in that are organic related. They can then take to the biochar facility for processing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Bob, before you go, I wanted to, now, Bob is retired, as I've already told most of you. Bob has been with SCS for 40 years, I guess now, right, Bob? 46 years. And I tell you that Bob and I have developed a relationship over the years, and I have a lot of respect for Bob. Sorry he's leaving, but I'm glad to tell you that he's going to continue to work on some of SPSA's projects through SCS, just as when he wants to. And what he's turned over his role for SPSA's project manager to Quinn Bernier. Quinn, you want to stand up? Quinn will be taking Bob's place. She was handpicked by Bob, actually. So that says a lot about Quinn, and we've already started working, and we're building this good relationship with Quinn as well. So moving forward, Quinn will probably be the person that will be reporting back to the board on certain things that Bob has done in the past. So Bob, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And your continued service.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you, Dennis. Before we move on to the next item, I forgot during my comments to give our board member Earl Sorey an opportunity to introduce a new alternate ex officio member from Chesapeake.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have had someone acting as our waste management administrator for about 13 months now. I'm pleased to say that Mr. Jeffrey Spencer is no longer acting. He is officially our waste management administrator. So Jeff, you'd stand up, please. So he's currently in the role now. He will, as soon as we get him appointed by council, serve as an alternate for me. And I believe we have submitted names for the governor's appointee to the board as well. So thank you.
All right. The next issue is our quarterly financial report. It's this month, it's a written-only report, starts on page 33 of the agenda package. Our CFO is here if there are any questions, concerns, things you want, dying to know about the financial report? Okay. If not, is that something we need to accept? No, okay, so at that point, this might be a record for at least the our normal business. Is there any other business that anybody would like to bring to the board? Having none, then I guess we'll declare a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back, and for those who are attending orientation, we'll begin the orientation. But the meeting is still in session, I've been told. Okay, so we'll have a 10-minute break. Thank you. Here in the next couple minutes, if everybody take their seats, please. Okay. All right, we'll get a couple more minutes to round up a few of our members that have strayed. All right, let's cancel. We've completed our break now, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the executive director and our general counsel. They're going to run this orientation, and I'm sure it's going to be fascinating.
Well, it's going to be long. The governance piece, and then he's got some slides on FOIA. FOIA is going to
Governance.
go through.
Yeah. What am I doing on governance? All right, well, I didn't realize I was covering the governance piece, but I will go through this with you, and then we'll get to the real exciting stuff with FOIA.
In the FOIA and COIA stuff that we're going to get to is all because SPSA is a public body. We have an enabling statute, the Waste and Water Authority Act, that governs our particular operation. And then in 2009, there was a Senator Cosgrove put through legislation that applied only to SPSA and not other waste authorities, and that's become encoded in section 15.2, 5102.1. We sometimes refer to it as the Cosgrove Act, Cosgrove Bill, but it set forth, at that time, SPSA was struggling in a number of different ways financially, and it was getting a lot of scrutiny in the newspaper. And so this was passed, and it put it together some specific requirements for how SPSA operates. And since that time, it's a completely different organization. You'll sometimes hear a reference to SPSA 2.0, and that's sort of the post-Cosgrove, where we got rid of the RDF facility, sold that back, but it basically became a new organization with different fundamentals and how we're operating. But that still applies to us. It defines our core purpose as the management of the safe and environmentally sound disposal of regional waste. And then the list there at the bottom of that slide, you can see is sort of the requirements that are in that act as far as, and the idea was to make sure SPSA was following basic, routine management things that would be good and useful for the operation of any organization, and particularly since SPSA had gotten in trouble with debt before, putting in some provisions about when we can do it again and under what circumstances. So there's a strategic operating plan, a detailed financing plan that is required. And Dennis, I think, was going to get into that a little bit more, but that's something that we adopt and approve every July as part of the annual meeting. If we're going to issue debt, right now there is no debt, but there, if you're going to do it, then there's a process as far as doing a study, getting a third-party CPA to approve it, and 75% of the board needs to approve it as well. Landfill capacity is evaluated annually, and then the part that I'm going to get to in more detail is there's a specific requirement that we strictly comply with FOIA, which is a bit redundant because everybody should strictly comply with FOIA, but they made it a point of emphasis for SPSA in this statute, so we have to do that. And then the one that we deal with all the time is the one at the bottom on the limitations on what Dennis can approve, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on in contracts and things day to day that the board doesn't need to consider. And at the time, there was a lower threshold in here. It was 30,000, I think, when the first version of this statute came out and was amended. We bumped it up to 100,000, even though the act would have let it go up to 200,000. But basically, if it's something under $100,000, it's within the board-approved budget, then Dennis can go ahead and enter into that agreement without board approval. But otherwise, the default rule is that the executive director cannot enter into any obligations on behalf of SPSA. So if it's below that, and there's some other exemptions for emergency, sole source procurements, but this is the basic rule of thumb. And even when Dennis is doing that, and he will typically bring the things that are over 30,000 between up to 100,000 just to the board, so that you have knowledge that it's been done. But that's the general rule. Am I going the wrong way? Bylaws. And we do have articles of incorporation. We do have bylaws. They're all available on our website. We did amend the bylaws a few years ago to address a few things, but they are sort of our constitution, what we have to do and what we have to follow in our processes and as a board. Meetings, fourth Wednesday of each month, that is typically the schedule. No meeting in November, and December is moved earlier so we can deal with the holidays there. We do have the ability to have special meetings. They're not frequent. We have had a couple mostly related to the alternative waste contract, but those can be called by the chair or by any three members of the board if it's appropriate. This is a little bit interesting and just something to keep in mind. We've not had an issue with it in any recent time, but quorum of the board is a majority. So we have 16 members, 9 have to be participating in a meeting to have a quorum. But a related issue is that to pass anything, we also have to have a majority, not just of those present, but of the whole board. So anything that is going to be passed has to have 9 votes, not simply a majority of the quorum. And so there'll be times where if we have something important coming up, Deborah may be, hounding people to make sure who's going to be there. Do we have enough people there? Because there'll be times where we have 75% voting requirements too. Certain things require that supermajority. And so it's not frequent, but if it's an important one, we'll make sure people are coming to the meetings and available. So we have the necessary folks here to get it done. Voting, obviously 1 vote per board member. Not counting the alternates unless they're filling in on that particular day for their ex officio counterpart. Officers, in the bylaws, there are 4 positions that are selected every year. It's chair, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer. And there's a committee that puts forth the names and slate of officers, and prior to the annual meeting in July, anybody, of course, can offer up alternatives. And it's important roles, but it's also, we understand that not everybody has the time to fill those roles. But if you do have the capacity to do it and take one of those management roles, it is helpful to have people in that, and same on the executive committee. The chair and vice chair, the way the bylaws are written, it says they can only serve 2 consecutive 1-year terms, but then it immediately says that you can serve a 3rd and a 4th if the board approves it. So it's not really a limitation if the board wants to continue to do it. And then the secretary and treasurer roles, they can be the same person, but that right now, Deborah's secretary, Sandy's treasurer, and it's usually staff that are handling those roles, but it could be anybody. Committees that we have under the bylaws, there are 2 that are required. One's the executive committee and the other's the audit committee. The chairman of the executive of the board is also chairman of the executive committee and will nominate and pick the members of that committee. And as part of the bylaws, it's supposed to be geographically representative of the member communities. So we don't want don't want the big cities in the east dominating. It's got to have, members from all over, so all the perspectives are represented on that committee. And we have done a very good job right now. It's the chairman plus up to 4 people can be on that committee, and we've got a good representation there now. Audit committee is also selected by the chair at the annual meeting. And all these, if there's a vacancy, then the chair can replace that person as well. But the audit committee obviously works with our auditors to handle our annual audit and make sure that the information that they need is given there. And then the bylaws also permit the formation of specific committees. Like over the last couple of years, we've had a committee that was handling the alternative waste disposal negotiations and contract, and that was a specifically appointed committee by the board. But it's typically would be board appointed or something that the executive director could appoint, but you can have those committees as well. And last couple of points here, the only direct appointment and hire that the board does is executive director. And from there, executive director hires the staff. Board gets, every year you get the budget to see what the staffing positions are and what's being asked by the executive director, but that's sort of a day-to-day operational thing that the executive director handles rather than the board. All right, now we're on to the fun stuff. I'm going to spend more time on FOIA than on COIA, which I hate COIA, I'll tell you that. I have a fondness for FOIA, but it's still a little dry. So SPSA obviously is a public body, and since you are members of the governing body of SPSA, you are also subject to FOIA for everything that you do in relation to SPSA. And the FOIA statute is based on the simple principle that the government belongs to the people. And the people ought to have the right to observe what happens in government and meetings and in documents, except in limited circumstances where the General Assembly has said it should be kept private. So it is, the default rule is that unless an exemption applies, the meetings have to be open, anybody can attend our meetings, and anybody has a right to ask for public records. And those are defined terms under the statute, both what a meeting is and what a public record is. And that is the default rule unless an exemption applies. And here, the statute, again, it's very clear that this is a presumption of openness for FOIA. And it's not just something that the judges have come up with. It's in the statute that it will be presumed open, that exemptions will be construed narrowly, and that the act will be liberally construed in favor of openness. And I've already talked about the requirement that applies to SPSA, which is unusual, that we must strictly adhere to the requirements. So I'm going to go through a general overview of what the statute is, how it operates, and try to focus on a few things that really are more important for you as board members to keep in mind while we're going along. Starting with meetings, you can see their basic definition taken from the statute is any regular meeting as a body or any assemblage of more than 2 members of the board, wherever held, with or without minutes being taken, whether or not votes are cast. So obviously this, something like this is a meeting, but the harder part to remember and to follow is the second part there. If there's a gathering of any 3 members of the board and you are talking about SPSA business, transacting public business, it is a meeting of the board, subject to all the rules of the board. So, Dennis was joking at the beginning, that I was getting a little worked up when description of what we're doing here, because this is a gathering of 3 or more board members. So if we had stopped our first meeting and then just said, oh, we're going to meet later for orientation, that would be a separate meeting, which would require separate notice, separate minutes, and everything else. And so that's why we're doing it at the end of the regular meeting and not as a separate meeting, because anything like that would count. If you walked out after the meeting's over and 3 people were having a discussion in the parking lot about SPSA business, that would be a board meeting. We sometimes run into this issue where if Dennis is going to present at a locality, city council or county board meeting, and we have 2 of our regular board members who were just there because, they're always there, and then chairman wants to go, we have to say, all right, we're going to have 3 people in there, we're going to be talking about SPSA business, can we do that? And that's just something you got to keep in mind. Whatever it is, if you got a conference call with 3 people talking about SPSA business, that would be not only a board meeting, but I'll get to the emails too, but conference call, the general rule is you can't have electronic or telephonic meetings except for as specifically allowed by FOIA. So conference calls could be a meeting. Email meeting, the general rule is you can send out emails to more than 3 board members, but what you can't have is a contemporaneous discussion going on. So if it turns into what is essentially a contemporaneous exchange of comments or discussion, then you might be into the realm of an electronic meeting. So you will see a lot of times when the emails come out from Dennis or from Deborah, it'll be blind copy. You won't see your name there, but it's sent out as blind copy so people can't respond to everybody. And occasionally I'll send out an email saying, don't reply all to everybody. We don't want to turn this into a meeting. So it's really something that you have to just keep aware of, and people will, and it helps with everybody sort of knows the rules and everybody thinks about it and can point out that we have to something we have to take into consideration. Now, under the statute, employee meetings are not considered, meetings of SPSA. It's really the board that's the constituent membership of the public body. So staff can meet in groups of 3. That's not an issue. Now, the committees, though, the standing committees that we have and any other committees that we appoint are, under the statute, their own public bodies subject to all the same rules. And there, if you have less than, if you have 3 people, it could be 2 people meeting would be, because their quorum could be a public meeting. But just for now, all you need to know is that they're subject to the same rules. And so the 2 exceptions here for, in meetings, like if 3 people were meeting at the, I don't know, high school football game, just happen to be there, that's not a meeting. You have to be transacting public business. And if there's no discussion of public business, then it's not going to be a meeting, no matter if the whole board is there. And this has been loosened up a little bit because you get some situations where people show up at a public forum that's not a SPSA meeting, it's not a specific anything we're doing, but people show up and get into a situation as at a public meeting if you get into topics that are related to what your public body is dealing with. So, but if it's just a general public forum, again, if it's not talking about our business, then it's not going to be a meeting. We wouldn't need to worry about it. Let's see, what do we need to cover on this in the meetings? We did no electronic or remote participation policy. Under the statute, and this really, there was one existing for emergency situations before the pandemic, but once the pandemic hit, it really became a problem trying to get people, because you couldn't sit in the same room with anybody, and there weren't enough provisions, and the ones that were there weren't good. They really didn't cover everything to allow people to meet electronically. So some of this stuff got passed because of that. But now you can have remote participation if you adopt a policy, which we did at the end of the year. We have to do annually. At this point, they changed that to make an annual requirement. But SPSA and the executive committee have adopted a remote participation policy which is permitted under FOIA. And so there are reasons why you can, and it will usually be, we'll dial it in through the electronic stuff that we have set up for the meetings. And we have the capacity to let board members participate in closed session to the extent necessary through that method. But the reasons would be disability, if you have disability or medical condition, and medical condition could be someone in your family too. If you're taking care of them and you can't be at the meeting because of that, then you can participate remotely, or if you live more than 60 miles away from our meeting, you can participate remotely. And then also there's a general just personal exception. So if you're on vacation, for whatever reason you can't be at the meeting, you got another meeting you got to go to, or whatever it is, you can do that. That, however, is limited to 3 meetings per year. The first category of disability, medical, and residence, that one, there's no limit on how many times you can participate that way, but for personal reason, it would be 3 times per year. Notice requirements, you've seen the notice ones are going out generally three business days before our meetings. You have to publicly notify that. Deborah takes care of all that, posts on our website. The agenda packages have to go out to the public and be made available to them the same time they're made available to you. That also happens through link on the website. Our meetings can be photographed, filmed, recorded by members of the public as long as it doesn't get in the way with what we're doing. And we do keep minutes, and you've seen those in the packages that come out. They are required for open meetings, not closed meetings, and they generally cover who's there, what happened at the meeting as a summary. So closed meetings, at the top, there's a whole list of available exemptions under FOIA, some of which are very specific to other public bodies, some are general. When we go to a closed session, we try to be transparent. We don't do it unless we think we really need to do it and have a reason to do it. But you have to find something that specifically applies to the situation you're doing it in. So for personnel matters, you can have closed session. These are the ones that would be more common for us. Acquisition, disposition of real property, which has happened a few times in the last couple of years. That's not a yearly thing. But legal matters, that is something that we can go into closed session for, and we do on a fairly regular basis. And if we have contract matters where negotiation in public would hurt our negotiating position to discuss it in public, we can go into closed session there. And the way it works is that there's a motion that has to be passed by the board. The motion has to be very specific about the reason why we're going into closed session and name the exemption that we're relying on. Once we are in closed session, we can't discuss topics that were not included in the motion. The board can't take any action, can't take a vote or anything like that in closed session. You can have a discussion, you can have straw polls sort of as to, you know, what do people think about this or that, but you can't take a vote and approve any action in that closed session. We don't have to do minutes. I do want to address this, non-member attendance. Under the statute, under FOIA, you can have non-members attend closed session, and it will usually be staff, you know, management level staff that will come to those closed meetings. And the statute, it generally allows anybody who's necessary or would be useful to the board in whatever they're discussing. And we've adopted a policy where the chair will say at the beginning, you know, going into the closed session, here who is going to participate in that closed session. And it may be, you know, be staff, council, and then one of the things that we usually have a standing request for is one or two council from the individual localities who come to the meetings will want to participate so they can help their board members understand what's going on. And so that's something that the chairman will say, here's what I'm proposing. If somebody has a problem with it, you can speak up. And it's ultimately a board decision, and if you know, we've never had that, you know, a real dispute over it, but if there was, it would be a vote that the board would decide, because that's, you get to decide who comes into your closed session. So anyway, once you're done with the closed session, you have to come back out and you certify that the closed session was held for a proper purpose. You know, the topics were limited to those that were discussed, and we do roll call votes. And so, and at that time, if you don't think things went right, then you can say, I'm not going to, you know, I'm not going to vote in favor of that. But if we follow the rules, you know, you come out, you certify it, and that's the final step of that process. Public records. I'm trying to go through this quickly. It's basically any writing, recording, however, paper, electronic, whatever form it is, if it relates to the transaction of public business in possession, custody, or control of the public body, it's going to be a public record subject to FOIA. There's a list of exemptions that apply. Again, it's at the bottom here, but those are the ones that we would typically use. And we don't get many FOIA requests. There was a point in time, and you know, I started working for SPSA as over 20 years ago, and what I was doing was handling all the FOIA requests that they got from the newspaper, and that was, you know, that's not how it is. We occasionally get one, but what you need to know is that if you are if you're in possession of something, whatever it is that relates to SPSA as part of your role, it's going to be a public record that may have to be produced. So if I've got my presentation here and I draw a smiley face on it, that's a different public record than the one that's blank. If you send a text message to a board member while you're sitting, you know, here, isn't this presentation boring? This guy's an idiot. That's a public record that would have to be produced. You know, if anytime you hit send an email, that's a public record. So just be mindful of that whatever you put in writing, and I will tell you, as FOIA lawyers, is a universal recommendation, try to not, or at least limit text messaging or other kind of stuff, because it is all subject to FOIA.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to that point, we had what, we had like 14,000 emails in our last request with the lawsuit we were going through, right? 14,000 emails that we had to go through. I think that was the right number. It was some.
Yeah, we did.
You could never even imagine, but when we started digging through, we found.
Yeah, the last response. One, you know, a lot of times it's a way for the newspaper or other media or just interested citizens to find out about their local governing body and want information. We had one from one of the people who had put in a bid on the alternative waste contract, and we had to get prepared for that at the end of that, and it was, all right, you know, everything related to that. So got to go around, everybody on the committee, everybody, you know, search your emails, got to go to each of the committee members. I need everything you wrote down on a piece of paper that related to this, and we got to go through it, produce what's relevant and responsive to this. And some I didn't do it because I knew that was going to happen. Others have detailed notes you got to go through and figure out. And so it's just something to be mindful of. It's, you know, if you need to take notes, take notes. But if you're, Al, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, real quick, and you've already hit on it, but from a previous experience of mine, remember, your personal phone is not your personal phone if you're conducting business on it.
Yep, and that's a very good point. Doesn't matter where you're doing it from or what device you're using, if you're the one doing it and it relates to transaction of public business, it is a public record. And so if you don't want your phone to have to be turned over and searched for records, then don't use it for SPSA business. So these are sort of guiding principles that I was closing with, you know, be aware that of that, be mindful of gatherings of 3 or more members, we already covered that, and conscious of the fact that we are a public body. We try to be transparent. The public has a right to the stuff. We're not, you know, get mad about it. We just deal with it, but it's something that we have to be aware of and follow the rules. And if you do have an issue, talk with me, talk with Dennis, and we'll address it. All right, this is my last slide. Conflicts of Interest Act, which we call COIA. I had put in here, and it's a requirement that you read and familiarize yourself with both COIA and FOIA. There will be no test on this one. I hate this statute. It is one of the most poorly difficult statutes to apply. It is awful. There's an advisory council for conflicts. I've called them 5 or 6 times, and they've never been able to answer my question on the phone. They've always said, I'll have to get back to you on that because it is so convoluted how you apply those specific rules. I need to, you know, write it down. So I'm very specific about what you're presenting, and then I go back and read it, analyze it, and give you an answer. It's just that it's difficult to get through. But it generally, you know, it relates, what it's trying to do is make sure that the things that are being voted on by public bodies are being done in an objective manner, that people aren't gaining a benefit from it personally, financially, or their family members aren't. So obviously, bribes, accepting gifts, anything that would influence official conduct is prohibited. Everything else, I would say, use your common sense. There are certain thresholds in the statute that apply, but if a contract matter comes before the board and it relates to something that you're involved in, your family member has an interest in, your employer has an interest in, then it could be an issue and you need to, you know, raise it. And the way we would do it is disclose it, and if necessary, you abstain from the vote. There's certain kinds of things that we wouldn't be able to do depending on the nature of the disclosure, but usually for what we do, it's not a problem, just disclosure and abstaining from the vote. And then I put it to the end, there are annual disclosure forms that we have to do. We just finished those, and all the new members just did their own, so that won't happen again, but in December and January, you'll start getting those emails from me about those forms. So unless anybody has any questions, I will pass this back to.
So Brett is our general counsel, and he will, I promise you, he will keep you squared away on the Freedom of Information Act and COIA, because when it comes time for you to fill out paperwork, he's going to be calling you constantly. Make sure you get your paperwork in, and if you make a mistake on FOIA, he's the first one to be able to tell you that. I look at him as kind of a saving grace for us to make sure that we are staying in compliance, and we do stay in compliance. Yes, sir.
Let me add one more thing just about my role generally that I probably should have started with. I'm general counsel to SPSA, and you know, certainly that means whatever is given to me by Dennis or Tom as chairman, I will do that. There'll be, you know, my point is I don't represent board members individually. I represent the entity. There will be times where individual board members will have issues that they need to discuss with me, and you're all, of course, welcome to bring any matter to me. But it may, you know, just need to know that I'm representing the entity. I may have to go to Dennis or somebody because they're going, you know, SPSA's going to have to pay, you know, for that work and make sure that it's something that it's, you know, okay to do. But, you know, happy to help out wherever I can. And if you do have an issue, just raise it.
Okay. And in your board,
Let me,
yes, sir.
at least in the, I guess it's been about 5-6 years I've been on the board, these issues haven't been controversial. I don't recall any board member ever needing an attorney for any issues. only in that selection of that advanced waste management contractor did we even have a lawsuit. So we're giving you the law and telling you, you can, I just don't want anybody's imaginations running wild. But the biggest thing is if you generate a lot of documents, you're gonna have to get some boxes and put all those documents in those boxes. You can't just throw them out. So, because you might be, I've got a box full of SPSA documents, and they'll get to, at some point, they'll get old enough that under the law, we can shred them. I'll bring them in and they'll shred them. But, and we had one major FOIA associated with the advanced wastewater selection. But again, other than that one single issue, it's been pretty quiet and non-controversial.
All right, so all of the information, a lot of the information that Brett went over is in your orientation manual that everybody should have at their desk, along with contact information. And before we get started, I think it would be beneficial if we went around and introduced staff, starting with Grace. Would you stand up and introduce yourself and what you do? Stand up, please.
Rob Romano, I'm IT manager, usually handle the broadcasts.
And our meetings are recorded, and you can go to our website and see them if you want to look at past meetings. They're there to look at. I think we started doing this 5 months ago, so there's about 5 of our meetings are recorded. Norman. And you. All right, so I'm going to go over just a few things. This is a long presentation, so I'm going to jump through stuff that you can see other places. This is on our website. It talks about our mission, our vision, our purpose, and what our values are. And this is important to every person that comes in our organization. When part of the interview process is to determine if they're a person who fits into this mold, because we believe that the folks that we bring on not only have to be really smart, but they have to have the right type of mindset to work well in our organization. SPSA was created in the 70s. It was a public body, and it's incorporated by the state of Virginia. And interesting enough, when SPSA was first being conceived, it was actually a water and wastewater. It was planned to be a water and wastewater authority, and it morphed into what it is now. Because I guess we have 2 public utilities directors that probably can go back to that and tell us all about it. But I think it ended up being a waste authority rather than a wastewater and water authority. So the next, it's defined. Our purpose is clearly defined in the code as providing safe and environmentally sound disposal of all the regional waste. We'll talk more about what regional waste really means in just a few minutes. Our members are the 8 member communities. You all know who they are. Each of you are represented by or represent one of those. We have a 16-member board of directors. That's 8 appointed by the governor and 8 appointed by the member localities. Those 8 appointed by the governor are recommended to the governor by the member localities. So if you were elected this year, that means that your city council or board of supervisors recommended you to the governor's office and reasons why they think you would be a good appointee, and then the governor made that appointment. We have 145.5 full-time equivalent employees from across the 8 member communities and 145.5 full-time employees. That's full-time equivalents, remember that. All SPSA facilities are Virginia Environmental Excellence Program, E3 certified. Grace takes care of that. Virginia Environment, it means something to be a part of the Virginia Environmental Excellence Program. What it means is that you have an EMS in place, which is modeled by ISO standard 14001. It means that DEQ only they give you a shortened inspection schedule. So rather than having an inspection every quarter, I think we have every 6 months, right, Mike, Grace? It depends on what the facility is, but different facilities, we have less inspections than most because we're trusted by DEQ that we're doing the right thing because we're a member of that program. And we're also a member of the Wildlife Habitat Council. That's recently done some rebranding, and that's not the new name. What's the new name of it? This just changed. Grace? What? Tandem Global is what it's called now. But what it is at the landfill, you'll see a video here shortly about the landfill, and it's got deer and turkeys, and we got 3 sets of eagles. We got all kinds of wildlife out there. So this kind of helps to create habitat for the wildlife, so you draw more wildlife to the area. What we do, we manage and operate the regional landfill in Suffolk. And the regional landfill, it's a funny story that when I first came to work here, somebody called and asked somebody what time the dump opened. And I said, you tell them that you don't know what time the dump opens, but the landfill opens at 8 o'clock because we don't operate a dump. We operate a landfill. And I recommend, if you haven't been to the landfill, that you schedule an appointment through Deborah for Norman, myself, Mike. One of us would be glad to take you on a tour of the landfill because we're really proud of the landfill. It's not your grandfather's dump, as I like to say. We do this professionally. It's well managed. You'll see some pictures. You're never even going to recognize it as being a landfill when you see some of the pictures coming up. We have 8 transfer stations and 2 convenience sites. The difference in a transfer station and a convenience site is we don't man the convenience sites. We do man the transfer station. The convenience site, the citizen will come up to the convenience site and unload their waste into a compactor or a roll-off box or something like that, where a transfer station, you come up on the floor, we've got people there working, and they're going to handle the waste for you right then. We have a transportation division that Andre's in charge of. We have 2 fleet maintenance shops, one for tractor trailers and other on-the-road vehicles, and then we have a yellow iron fleet shop out at the landfill. And tire processing facility at the landfill, we process how many tires, Mike, a year? 1 million tires a year. And that goes back to what Mr. Moore was talking about. Before we had that, those 1 million tires were usually piled up on the side of the road or in ditches all over the place. And each one of you member communities were required to go out and pick them up and find something to do with them. So that resolved that problem. We have a household hazardous waste collection program that operates across the whole region. I have an e-waste recycling program where you can bring your computers, monitors, cell phones, anything electronic we'll take. Here is just a service area map, and I think the one thing I want to bring out in this map is that the regional landfill is, well, most of you are looking which way? The regional landfill is right here. And you see that's in the middle of our whole entire service area. So whenever the SPSA was being planned, they did a really good job from a logistics standpoint to put the landfill right in the middle of our service area. Because if you're coming from Virginia Beach down here to get here, or you're coming from Southampton to here to get here, you're almost right in the middle. So it decreases your transportation costs completely by doing, it doesn't eliminate it, but it reduces it greatly by the location of each one of our transfer stations. The green dots are the transfer stations that are located across all of our member communities. And they're important because we use those for not just municipal customers, but we also use them for contract customers. Let's just think if you're waste management and you could not use one of our transfer stations and you had, I guess down in this section in the bottom right-hand corner here, somewhere around Sandbridge, right, Mr. Chairman? So if you got a front load dumpster down and you got to pick it up, and you can, when your truck is full, you come right here and you dump it. If we didn't have that transfer station there, that front load truck would have to go here, it would have to go across the river, over here to Bethel and dump, and then go all the way back. Well, if you're involved in collection like most of you are, you know when the truck's not on the route picking up trash, you're losing money. So by having these transfer stations located across the member communities, you're always close to a transfer station somewhere. For example, the city of Chesapeake, if they're working in South Norfolk, not so much now, but when RDF was there, South Norfolk waste would come across the Jordan Bridge and into the Portsmouth transfer station because it was convenient. When they're working in Western Branch, their waste goes to the Suffolk transfer station because it's closer to them. It just makes the system work better. And we have, by having transfer stations scattered out throughout our member communities, we're always close to a transfer station somewhere. Our projected waste volumes for this year, 480,000 tons. This includes some recycling that we're receiving, like from City of Portsmouth, and the numbers are the percentages you can see. Franklin is 1% of our total, but yet Virginia Beach is 33% of our total. But both Franklin has 2 votes on the SPSA board and Virginia Beach has 2 votes on the SPSA board, and that's by design. How we do what we do. Yes, sir.
Lunch is here, so we thought right now there should be a time for everybody to go get their lunch, and then you can pick up
Sure.
while we're eating.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, Deborah, you want to give us instructions?
And we'll go ahead and keep moving right on along while you all eat. The next item we're going to is how we do what we do. This is a diagram, very elementary, but this is constantly changing with the increase in the number of tons we're able to take to the AWD site. But member communities bring their waste to our transfer stations. Private haulers come to our transfer stations. From that point, as we said earlier, we sort out the processable and non-processable as best as we can. And the processable waste then goes to the alternative waste disposal site using SPSA trucks. Some city trucks like Portsmouth will be going directly to the Portsmouth transfer station where the alternative waste disposal site is co-located. So they go directly to that and avoid the transfer station, but the alternative waste disposal site is a transfer station. Other SPSA waste will go to the regional landfill currently because we're not able to process all of the waste at this point at the alternative waste disposal sites, and SPSA's vehicles carry that to the SPSA landfill. And then the very top is, you see is MBI, it's in really small writing, Mr. Bilt's Incorporated. They're our third-party hauler who take waste to private landfills. Two private landfills we use are Bethel and Atlantic. Bethel is located in Hampton. Atlantic landfill is located in Waverly. They take all the commercial waste. Now, I say they take all the commercial waste, but I want to be clear about this. When, at the end of the day, if we brought in 2,000 tons of total waste and 400 tons of that waste was commercial waste, we take 400 tons of our waste to a commercial landfill. That doesn't mean it's all the commercial waste separated out. It's 400 tons of commercial waste, period. It could be trash from any one of your local cities. It just depends on what's most convenient for us to do at this point. At the end of the day, all we're going to haul to the private landfill is a volume equal to the commercial tons that we bring in. And we actually do that on an annual basis. We know we're going to bring in 200,000 tons of commercial waste. We work it out so it's 200,000 tons over the course of 1 year. Makes operational sense to do that. Staffing and budget. In FY26, the current budget we're in, we have 145.5 full-time equivalent positions, 140 full-time positions, and 11 of those are part-times working less than 30 hours a week. There are various positions we're required to have security at the regional landfill during closure. We have part-time employees who do that. We have part-time truck drivers who only haul 2 or 3 nights a week, or they may haul 5 nights a week, but on a shorter duration. So we have 14 members of administrative staff in the executive office that includes human resources, accounting, IT, and our safety department. Environmental management and HHW have 6 full-time employees. The regional landfill has 22.5 full-time employees. That includes the tire shredding operation. The transfer stations and scale houses has 55 full-time employees. Transportation 34 and fleet maintenance 14. Our budget for FY26 is $53.4 million, and we have to have a balanced budget just like any of the localities. The projected municipal tons for this year is 450,300 tons, and we have $4.4 million in capital expenditures annually. You know, oftentimes when you're talking about capital expenditures, you think of borrowed money. As Brett has talked about earlier, we don't borrow money. We pay for these capital expenses on a cash basis each year, and we typically have about $4 million in capital expenditures that we put aside for. So operating fundamentals is financial accountability. I don't know why this is black. It wasn't black, or it's probably not black on your handouts either, but our operating fundamentals are financial accountability, safety and risk management, and environmental responsibility. Those are 3 of the most important things we look at every single day. Are we doing these things? Are we operating safe and lowering our risk? we have financial accountability for all the money that we spend, and are we being environmentally friendly? That's why, because it's coming in. Sorry about that. Operational departments. We have a transfer station. These all fall under Norman. Transfer stations, transportation, fleet maintenance, and the regional landfill. All those fall under Norman, and then each one of those have managers at each one of the levels that handle specifically the day-to-day operations within those units. Transfer stations vary in size and design capacity, from very small one out at Franklin to a very large one at Lansdowne. And that's based on the population and the amount of volume of waste we bring in to those transfer stations each day. The larger facilities operate using bi-level, where we have a drive-through underneath that our big trucks go through, and there's a hole in the floor, and we just push the waste into the floor, and it goes into the truck. Then the smaller ones, we actually have to lift the trash up and put them over the side of the truck. But we'll look at that closer with some pictures in a few minutes. Tip floor level is located on the upper level, and transfer vehicles go underneath of it. Boykins and Ivor operate using the 40-yard compactor, so the citizen can come up, put the waste in to the compactor, and then eventually, when it's full, it gets compacted and goes back, and it's ready for the next customer. Here is a picture of the Suffolk transfer station. This is typical of our larger transfer stations, how they look, how they operate, virtually the same. When you first come to a transfer station, everybody has to go across the scale. That scale operator determines the type of customer it is, what they're actually trying to do. They kind of are the gatekeeper of the facility. They determine where the person's going to go to. Next, they get in line, and this happens to be Suffolk, so all of the municipal trucks are on the left. And then if you're a private citizen, you want to use that facility, you'll be in the right-hand lane. Then when the truck gets onto the tip floor, this is the inside of the transfer station. They lift their truck beds up and dumps all the trash onto the floor. They lower their truck bed, hopefully, and then they go out the door. From time to time, they don't lower the truck bed and they run into the door, and we have a problem. But most of the time, they do exactly what they're supposed to do. Here are the holes in the floor. So if you go back to the previous slide, you have the truck, the trash, and behind the trash are the holes in the floor. And that's what we're looking at here. And we have a loader on the floor that's constantly pushing the waste up to that hole. There's no truck under there now. So once the truck gets in that tunnel, then we push the waste into the truck bed just like that, pack it down till we get hopefully 20 tons on every truck, because the more we can haul, 20 tons gets us, make sure we're underneath of the limit for weight on the road, and it also makes sure that we're hauling as much as we can, because if you only get 18 tons in that truck, and after 10 loads, you could have hauled a whole nother one for free if you get 18 versus 20. So we shoot for 20 tons. That's a benchmark number that Andre is always looking at to make sure that those trucks are leaving the transfer stations full. And then the top that you see there is an old style top. One of the worst things I hear is when somebody calls about trash blown out of a truck. We'll run a truck down to try to find out where they are if they're spilling trash on the street. That's one of the worst images you can have as an authority, and we take it seriously. Transportation division, there are currently 34 drivers in the transportation unit, and they work 2 different shifts. We haul for 16 hours a day. Transfer operators provide waste hauling services for the 8 transfer stations, and hauling waste to either the regional landfill, to AMP, or to Atlantic Landfill in Waverly for those western communities currently. SPSA's got 3 tankers. Those tanker trucks are used to haul leachate from each one of the transfer stations, because leachate is garbage juice. So if water comes in contact with garbage, it becomes leachate, and you have to handle it as leachate material. So you can't just put it into the ditch out by the street at Ivor. You gotta, if you got leachate, you gotta haul it back to be treated. So those trucks are constantly running to transfer stations. We have, 10,000 gallon tanks, is that right, at the transfer stations, Norman? And they empty those 10,000 gallon tanks, bring them back to the landfill, drop them in to our leachate ponds, and then we treat that leachate. Our third-party MBI hauls an amount of waste, and I've already talked about this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it unless you have questions. They haul an amount of waste that's equivalent to the commercial tons. Because SPSA made a rule years ago that we won't put any commercial waste in the regional landfill, and we weren't going to haul any commercial waste. The reason for that rule was because there was a time when everybody felt like the commercial sector was getting a better deal than the municipal sector. So what they said is, we're going to continue to use transfer stations for the purpose of contract waste, but they're going to have to pay their own way. And we're not going to put it in the landfill, and we're not going to haul it. So whatever the cost is, they've got to pay. This year's budget, we're going to ask for an increase in the contract waste part of the tip fee because our costs are going up. Right now, we're $62 a ton, and we're going to be looking to go to about $67 to $68 a ton, still trying to get to that final number before the budget comes out. But we've got to make sure that we're covering our costs, and there's also a cost associated with operating the transfer station. We typically would try to make $8 to $10 a ton from commercial customers for operating our transfer stations.
Hey, Dennis, can I?
Yes.
Can I mention something here? What Dennis is talking about on the commercial versus municipal, a lot of that is developed over the years of the way SPSA was operating and how the communities wanted to operate in order to continue the organization move forward with use and support agreements. And so that is one of the focuses. The top priority is always going to be municipal waste. But I don't know if everybody's been given the use and support agreements that we have with our localities, but if you haven't looked at it, I recommend that you would, because a lot of that stuff is in there. There are uniform agreements with each locality by which the localities agree to bring and are required to bring their waste to us. But in exchange for that, it's sort of a constitution of what we can and can't do. And that's one of those things. You might hear stuff from time to time. We can't handle out of area waste, because there was a concern at one point that we'd start bringing in waste from New York or something like that. So there's limitations on that. And those are the guiding rules. And then, we're talking about the strategic operating plan, which is changed every year, that is an exhibit to that. So if we want to make incremental changes, as long as we're not violating these big rules, we can do that on an annual basis.
Thank you, Brett. That's a good point. And from what Brett was talking about a second ago was these use support agreements. They're all available on our website. And one of the resources I'm going to give you at the end of the presentation is our website address. So you can go to our website. You can, if you want us to download a copy and send it to you, we'll do that. But it's just easier to go to our website. All of these documents are located on the website, and you can see what they contain. But the use support agreements are an important part of what we do for each of the member communities, and it outlines what SPSA is going to do for the communities and what the communities are going to do for SPSA. So the waste types that we have, there are many. There's a tip fee schedule that has a whole bunch of things on it, but they're really small. I'm focusing on the big stuff now. Municipal waste is what city and county vehicles drop off, and then residents drop off. You see a lot more residential drop off for municipal waste at the western communities, but we get a lot of tree debris, construction debris, that type of stuff for the eastern communities, from Suffolk, Norfolk, Portsmouth, Chesapeake, and Virginia Beach. Commercial, non-municipal, we have two different types of commercial waste. One is contract, and that's where we have a contract with a hauler that says they're going to bring us 30,000 tons a year. It's important to have those commercial contracts, because what that allows us to do is we can go to the table and negotiate airspace with one of our vendors at a much lower rate. If we say, you know what, we've got 200,000 tons of commercial waste we're going to bring you, what can we get for it? If we go to and say, hey, how much are you going to charge us for dumping? They say, how many tons you got? Well, I don't really know. Well, they say, well, I really don't know what I'm going to charge you, but it's going to be probably $100 a ton. Our fee is about $40 a ton. The only way we can do that is by having these contract commercial accounts, because the contracted commercial, if they don't bring us 30,000 tons, they have to pay us for 30,000 tons. That's one of the things we talked about at today's board meeting, is having a 20 and a 10. So the more we can guarantee, the better the price we can get for our commercial customers. Non-contract rate is $78 a ton right now. Here we go. City and county vehicles, the drop-off is $65 a ton, same for residential drop-off at $65 a ton, 62 and 78 for contract and non-contract waste. Municipal waste at $65 per ton pays for SPSA transfer station hauling and disposal. Contract commercial, and I'm not going to go through that because I'm going to give you some more information here that says the same thing. The $65 per ton breakdown currently is $36 for disposal. SPSA hauling is $8, transfer station $8, and then there's $13 surcharge that's on there for expansion and closure of the regional landfill. Contract commercial rate is $62 a ton. It's $40 for disposal, $12 a ton for hauling, and $10 for operating the transfer station. And non-contract commercial is $78 a ton, $40 for disposal, $12 for hauling, $26 for transfer station and landfill. And that's really there to kind of help bring the number down for a regional landfill closure and expansion for municipal customers. Total waste volume with both municipal and contracts, just over 700,000 tons. SPSA hauls 450,300 tons of waste from SPSA transfer stations to one of these four facilities: AMP facility on Frederick Boulevard, the regional landfill, Atlantic landfill, and sometimes to Bethel. There's a lot of factors that weigh into that. We have a commercial contract with Waste Management where we swap tons. We've actually put tons in the Atlantic landfill for free for every ton that we take of their waste. So some of that waste goes out to Atlantic and we pay for it. Some of it goes to Bethel, we pay for it. It's strategically done. We look at those every day to determine what the best course of action is and what's most efficient. There's 250 questions.
Dennis, sorry, I meant to get you when you were talking about the tip fees. I just want to explain for the board members, the new board members in particular. By statute, we are required to charge enough to pay for our operations. And so that's something that is reviewed every year, and there's a process that we're about to go into ultimately where it will be approved, the new rates will be approved as part of the annual budgeting process. But there's a statutory process under our enabling legislation how we have to do it. So we'll be giving, there'll be a preliminary rate of scheduled fees that has to be adopted by the board, has to be advertised to the public because we're a public service authority. The public has the right to come and comment on the rates that we're going to charge. We haven't gotten anybody doing that. I think Power Company draws a little more attention than we do, but that's something we have to do, and then we have to adopt it. And so you'll see that, Dennis constantly throughout the year saying, this is what I think the rate's going to be. And we want to make sure, everybody knows what's coming down the road so you can plan for your own communities, but also we can plan for ours because we have to go through this process. And if anybody has an issue with the rates, we want to know about it before we adopt all this stuff. We'll get it out there. And because this is forward-looking, Dennis is saying, I know what it's going to cost me to do this next year, and here's why. And so just pay attention to those because that's important because we want to make sure we are all on the same page before we start advertising for what we're doing.
And one of the challenging things about what Brett was just talking about was that we are typically, we have the same budget year you have, July 1 through June 30th. So our budget typically is being approved about the same time yours is. So if you don't know what your tip fee is going to be until the same time we know when the tip fee is going to be at the end, it makes it pretty tough. So we've pretty much been committed to giving you a tip fee of what we think it's going to be early on. We know what tip fee is going to be next year. We've already given it to you. So when your member community start figuring what your cost is going to be, you know what your tip fee is going to be. You know what SPSA is going to charge you. And then we come back, the only thing that has to happen at that point is that tip fee schedule has to be approved through the process Brett just talked about. So you've committed when I'm telling you what the tip fee is, I'm asking you then, you got any issues with this? You know, is this going to be a problem? If it is, we can work through, what do we need to work through? Because eventually you're going to be asked to approve that number that we've already given the member community so they can get their budgets done. Does that make sense? It makes it a little tough, but we get there.
Yeah, I would, that the fact that we handle commercial waste, take it through our system, and then an equivalent weight to other landfills, that is a service that for some of the members would be is vital, because like just for example, Virginia Beach, trying to take a commercial waste to a remote landfill versus the transfer station would have much greater costs. And the other thing is we make some money. That commercial service we provide does generate some net funds that actually subsidize the municipal rate.
And to that point, last year we fell short on municipal tons of what we projected, because Virginia Beach had changed some of the things that they were doing, and our projections from the previous year fell short last year. But we had a budget surplus because we brought in more commercial tons. And so those commercial tons are valuable. But I'm going to tell you something that, and I'll say this till the day that the daisies start growing on top of me. There's no difference in commercial tons and municipal tons. And this was no truer than when we had the pandemic. Because if someone goes to McDonald's and gets a hamburger and they eat it there and they throw the paper in the trash can at McDonald's, it's commercial waste. But if that same consumer goes to McDonald's, grabs the burger and takes it home and eats it and throws the same wrapper in the trash at home, it becomes municipal waste. So what is the difference? There's really no difference. And here's the thing, if we increase I've heard people tell me, well, you ought to just run the rate for commercial waste up. Well, add $10 to it, help pay for everything. Well, what happens is the people that we're here to serve are going to end up paying for that $10 increase, because Waste Management is not going to take a $10 increase and not increase their costs. So your citizens are going to be at your council meetings and board of supervisors meeting raising Cain because the cost of going out to dinner has gone up because Waste Management's increased. And it may sound like I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. It will make a huge difference. So the public body, we got to think about all that as we make decisions all the time. Here's one of our tractor trailers. We have 36 tractors, and we actually have 99 trailers right now, but we have another 9, is that right, Norman, on order that are due to come in. We have 108 total, 107 total, with the new ones that are scheduled to come in. Roughly on any given day, there'll be 23 trailers that we use at 4 transfer stations for drop and hook operation. Drop and hook means that we set, like for instance, at the Isle of Wight transfer station, we've got 3 trailers that we set out there, and during the day, the operators at the transfer station will pull one of those trailers up, load it, take it over, drop it, and hook up to one of the empties. And then whenever that happens, we send somebody over to pick it up. So they're drop and hook so that we always have available trailers. And it makes it a lot more efficient for us to operate with drop and hook wherever we can. Another location where we do a lot of that is Oceana. Our fleet maintenance division, we have 14 employees, and there's maintenance technicians, welders, support personnel, and the managerial staff. There are 2 maintenance facilities, one 14-bay shop over on Victory Boulevard right across from the shipyard. That's where we maintain all of our tractor trailers, and our transportation unit is located at that same spot. And then we have a heavy equipment shop out at the landfill that handles all of our big equipment, like articulating dump trucks and bulldozers and compactors and things like that. The fleet department has 254 pieces of rolling stock that they maintain with 14 people, and some of those are not mechanics, they're support staff. So they do a whole lot of work on a whole lot of equipment with a very few number of people. The type of equipment, I've gone through that. Some of the wheel loaders I didn't talk about. Each transfer station has 2 wheel loaders that they load trucks with. Track and monitor maintenance and repair costs consistently, because this is one of our most expensive operations is transportation and fleet. Fleet manages some of the transportation budget, but transportation is one of our most costly operations because of the vehicles that are included in fuel and all those other things that go along with it. They help procure all the equipment parts for a majority of SPSA's work centers. They manage various contracts such as fuel, truck tires, and heavy equipment, along with our procurement director, Angie. Here's an articulated dump truck. We've got, how many, 4 now? 3. 3 articulated dump trucks, and we use these to haul cover at the regional landfill. Every day we have to cover whatever waste we put into the landfill, and then every 14 days we have to cover it again with another layer of cover. So these articulated dump trucks move lots of dirt. Here's a wheel loader you'll see at any of our transfer stations. You see the tires look a little different. These are solid tires, or solid rubber tires. We have a contract to manage those with Colony Tire. That's a $800,000 or so contract, I think, to manage those tires for the year. That's just tires in the transfer station. But without those, you can't imagine what it would cost you and what downtime you'd have with air tires on those loaders. Here is the regional landfill, and the landfill is certainly one of our greatest assets, only second to our employees. And I want you to look at this, because you're not going to see a known landfill. I'm so proud of our landfill and the way it looks and what it means to go out there. Every time I get a chance to take somebody on a tour there, I want to do it, and I'm always leave feeling as proud as I can possibly be about what we do out there. And this video will show why. The area that's up top is gray and green. That's the area that we're working currently. This was taken months ago, so it doesn't quite look like that anymore. It's got a lot more waste in it. These are leachate ponds where the garbage juice is pumped to, and then in these aerators on the right. Here's a picture of our off-road dump truck taking cover up to the top of the landfill. That's a picture of cells 1 through 4 that's closed. It's in post-closure now. It was close to being able to turn that back over to the public. And this is the new RNG facility to the left, and to the right is the picture of the concentrator that we use to get rid of our leachate. And what you're looking at there is cell 7 construction, where we're removing soil so that we can put a liner in the bottom of it. We'll talk about that in a few minutes more about what that means. That again is cell 7 you're looking at. And here's some of the landfill wildlife. I'm not sure how, if I go out there at night, I spend a lot of time out there after hours. I'll just ride through, and there's nights when you can see 100, 150 deer on the side of the mountain, on the side of the landfill grazing, turkeys. I've seen a bear out there. We've got all kinds of birds, even turkey vultures, even the bad ones. Yeah. But anyway, that was just to give you a little taste. Now,
Dennis, let me echo, if you haven't already been out to the land site, get with Dennis and his staff and get an appointment. You're going to be impressed with the professionalism and the cleanliness of the site. And this actually, I've heard this back from visiting dignitaries, environmental people who have visited it. You will be impressed with how well it's run. Good or bad idea, it was probably a good idea at the time. This is a landfill right in the center of wetlands that are part of the Great Dismal Swamp. And they really do a great job to make sure that we do not impact the environment outside the landfill. And they, like I said, if you really need to see it, and you'll be impressed.
When we, I don't want, I'm going to be trying to be mindful of your time, but I love to talk trash, so you just have to bear with me a little bit. When we were trying to get cells 8 and 9 permitted, one of the first things we did was the Nansemond River Preservation Alliance, and I can tell you as a retired city manager, Mr. Moore, has dealt with them a number of times. They are some tough customers. They don't play. And we knew that impacting 109 acres of wetlands, we needed to at least address them, and thought we were going to get beat up pretty bad. We went there, we did a presentation, and we brought them to, and we got beat up pretty good. But when we invited them as I was leaving, I said, please come to the landfill and look at what we do. Don't just go on what you've heard, come and look at what we do. When they left, the whole entire board was there. They were on board with our expansion. They said, we will support it, and had 2 members that wanted to know if they could come out and work part-time at the landfill. And one of them was an ex-director of DEQ at Kentucky or one of these states that were close by. They were so impressed with what we did. And I think that's kind of the way it is when somebody comes out there, even if they're sure about what's going on, they say, I don't know about this landfill business. When they leave, they got a different opinion.
Hey, Dennis, let me add to Tom's comment. Another thing of value you can get from going out there is seeing in person what you'll hear referenced in our meetings. So like renewable gas, until I went out there and saw it for myself, saying, all right, here's what we do. Here's where the monitoring, this is what those little sticks are sticking out of the landfill. Here's where it goes to. I said, okay, now I get what we're doing here. The leachate, you'll hear the leachate evaporator. Well, how does that work? And you can see where the ponds are located, how they're hooked up, and they get, from the cells down to and so it's really, I found it to be extremely useful for what I do, to go out there and see in person some of the things that come up from time to time in our meetings. Because Dennis, if operational issues come up and he's using, you don't have an understanding of how that works, it's hard to follow it.
Thank you. So what I wanted to go through here is to kind of give you a kind of a visual of the landfill and what we have. If you're going west down 58, this is 58, 460, 13, and you come into the landfill somewhere around here. You come up, here's the Suffolk Transfer Station right there. This is our administrative building. And this is cells 1 through 4. Cells 5 and 6, cell 7, future cells 8 and 9, and then what was originally part of the master plan, this says original master plan, cells 10, 11, and 12, and then another borrow area. Cells 1 through 4 are closed, they're in post-closure, and they're, Mike, how long do we have left before post-closure's over? Another couple years? What's that? So we're at what now? 2039. So that's cells 1 through 4. It has a cap on it, it has grass growing on it, nothing else is going to change there. Cells 5 and 6 we're currently working in. This is what Bob was telling you earlier today, that we have current permitted capacity through August. If we, at the current rate, we're taking waste into the landfill. These 2 cells at our current waste level will last us until August of this year. But we did some permit modifications that still DEQ's given us a go ahead to move forward, but they're not, a final approval hasn't happened yet to expand. That will give us another couple of years of working here, but they're really tough airspace for us to get because of where they are. I'm not sure that we'll get all of it. We're going to get a lot of it. We're not, may not get all of it. Cell 7 is we're under construction now. We've had a wetlands permit on it. Part of that wetlands permit, we had 12 acres back here in the back corner that was wet. And all of this area here that says wetlands preservation, wetlands enhancement, and wetlands restoration, that was all part of, we had to buy 2 credits, two wetland credits, and then we had to put all of that area in preservation in order to compensate for the 12 acres that were back here in the back of this cell 7. So cells 8 and 9 are here, and I'm happy to say that we have a wetlands permit to expand into cells 8 and 9, but we don't have the DEQ permit. We've got part of it. We don't have the second part of the DEQ permit. But we don't feel that it's going to be an issue to get that once our plans are all ready to build it. In order to get these 2 cells constructed, it took 5 years and about $13 million investment for us to get through the regulatory process of getting wetlands permits for those two pieces of property. And I'll tell you that it was the toughest thing I've ever done in my whole entire career, was to get those two wetlands permits. And it became clearer and clearer we had to deal with the Nansemond Indian Nation and their objections to it. We had to deal with EPA, who had very, very strong objections to it. And matter of fact, as part of the EPA's objections, I came to the board originally and I said to the board, we're going to have to give up any future expansion of 10, 11, and 12. And they slammed their fist down and said, no, we're not. That's an overreach of authority. And I agree, it's an overreach of authority. But 6 months later, I was back telling them, if we don't give up future expansion into this section, we will not get a permit for these two cells. And they meant what they said. So the board made the decision eventually to forego any future expansion at the regional landfill, and this area is now has a preservation easement on it. And part of getting the permit for this, we had to purchase this section of land here, which is all wetlands, from a gentleman who had it for sale for many, many years. And we also purchased a section of land over in this area where at the bottom across 58, which is known as the Magnolia property. And we bought how many $1 million worth of wetlands credits to get through this. We ended up having to have a total of about 300 credits in order to make up for the 109 acres that we were impacting. So we spent a fortune in that. We spent a fortune in legal fees. We ended up having to pay the Nansemond Nation a fee for impacting what was some considered was native land. So we went through a lot to get there. But the moral of the story is once we go here, it's all over with. We don't have any more landfill capacity. Now, with what we have left here, what we have proposed in cell 7 and in 8 and 9, if we continue doing what we're doing now, we would have capacity through the year 2060. If we continue to bring the 450,000 tons or so a year, we'd have capacity to 2060. But we put out an RFP for them. We're going to talk more about that in a few minutes. But the RFP cuts that amount, cuts the amount of waste that we're putting in the landfill in half, and extends the life of the landfill through the end of the century, 2095, roughly at this point. So that's kind of the gist of the landfill. We've got a lot of capacity left, but we've got to manage it, and that's one of the things you'll hear me talking about all the time is how do we minimize what we put in the landfill? We'll be bringing back ideas over the next couple of years about how do we reduce the material that we're putting in the landfill. Right now, if we cut it in half to 50%, we need to find a way to deal with the 50% without putting it in the landfill. Because once this is gone, it's gone. And part of the wetlands process was we had to evaluate every parcel of land in our service area to determine if we could build a landfill on it. And anything that was 300 acres or larger, we kind of put to the side. Then we started adding filters to it. It had to be within a certain number of miles from a major artery. It had to have utility service available. It had to impact less wetlands than we would impact in order to build this landfill. It goes on and on and on, the list of things that we had to go through. Come to find out, there were 2 sites that were acceptable after we went through all those. They were both located in Ms. Lowe's area of Southampton County, and Southampton County promptly passed a resolution stating that no landfill will be built in Southampton County. So what I'm telling you is you don't have any other place to build a landfill. We've done the legwork. There's no other place to build. Your waste has to go outside of the region once this is full. We also did an assessment, part of the EIS, was what is it going to cost you if you had to take the waste outside of the region after 2036 when cell 7 was completed. In today's dollars, it would be $125, and you can escalate that to determine what your tip fee would be. Currently, we're paying $65 a ton. So the number would have almost doubled. So this regional landfill is an important asset for all of us. And we should certainly be mindful of that and continue to try to conserve what landfill space we have available. It's not your grandfather's dump. The regional landfills, marvel. You'll see that, I hope, when you come out. We have a state-of-the-art composite liner, and we'll talk about that a little more. We utilize the working face well and leachate management system, landfill gas monitoring that we have and what we use landfill gas for. We do groundwater monitoring constantly. All of this falls under Grace and our environmental department. Stormwater monitoring with very, very stringent requirements we have to meet. So we use an intergradient landfill design. Not a lot of people do it. You would think if you just on the surface, if you build a landfill, you drop a liner down, you build a berm on the side, and then you start building up. Well, using an intergradient landfill design, there's two advantages. One is you have to dig the center of this hole down 40 feet. It'll be 40 feet in the center. So at 40 feet in the center, you can imagine that now you've got a big bowl that you built, right? So that gives you a lot more capacity in the bottom of the landfill. But the real advantage of an integrated landfill is not necessarily the additional airspace. The real advantage is that when you put that composite liner in, and you know, if you can't imagine, it's like it's a big bathtub, and you fill the bottom of that big bathtub with this thick, thick, thick plastic, and then they weld all the seams together. Well, you've got water pressure from the ground pushing up at pretty good clip. And then you have limit of 12 inches of leachate on the surface. So if that composite liner were to ever leak, what would happen? The water in the ground would come into the landfill rather than the bad stuff from in the landfill going into the ground. And you can monitor that, and you would know that. Hopefully that never happens. But if it did, this is a safeguard against that using this intergradient landfill design. Right now we still have 400, this is a new, probably one of the most recent pictures we have from a drone. We still have 490,000 cubic yards of soil to take out of there to get down to that 40 feet in the center. I'm not going to go through this with you. When you come out, we'll go through all this, but there's all types of monitoring that we do. We collect landfill gas. That landfill gas goes back to another facility that actually turns the landfill gas into natural gas, or RNG, and it gets pumped back into the natural gas pipeline. It's very, very lucrative. You get what's called RINs for this when you sell it. We get royalties off of it. We don't actually operate the plant, but we made last year $350,000 just off of the RINs, just what we were due from royalties. So you can see what kind of money it's producing. Our liner system is pretty complex. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because it's going to bore some of you, but you prepare the subgrade, you dig it down, you prepare the subgrade, you install first a geocomposite drainage layer, and then you have another 12-inch geologic buffer layer, and then you put down a 40 mil HDPE high, help me Mike, high density polyethylene, right? HDPE. Then you use a geosynthetic clay liner on top of that, and then another 60 mil on top of that, and then a drainage layer on top of that. So between the ground that you started with and where you end up, you got this pile of stuff that's there to protect from damage to the liner. Here's the leachate system, the way it's designed, and this is all on our website. And when we go out, if you're interested in it, we can show you exactly how all this works. But there's a perforated line that goes down across the bottom of the landfill, and there's pumps that go down that diagonal pipe that goes down. There's these pumps that fit right down in the bottom of that piece of 10-inch casing. That pump goes to the bottom and pumps leachate out. We have a computerized system that manages that, and we can see that from our laptop or from an iPad all the time. So if there's an alarm goes off, we know what's going off, and we can go address it. Another thing that we try to do is, it's been a little tougher lately because of just the nature of where we are and building the landfill, but we try to keep the face of the landfill as small as we can to prevent from these items, which are all part of their DEQ permit, odors, vectors, windblown debris, risk to employees, damage to equipment, leachate from the rainfall. The larger the working area is, the working face area is, the more rainfall goes in it. It's 29,000 gallons of rain per acre, 29,000 gallons of rain per acre per inch of rain. So you got to be mindful of that when you're talking about leachate. Where did all those millions of gallons of leachate come from? Rainwater. Once they pass through the trash, it becomes leachate. All right, leachate management. We had it for years, pumped our leachate to HRSD. HRSD opened a SWIFT plant, Strategic Water Initiatives for Tomorrow, over at the plant by the old Tower Community College site out on 664 by the modern Merrimack Bridge. That's turned into a SWIFT plant, and what they do is they clean up wastewater to drinking water standards, and they pump it back into the aquifer. And they're trying to help combat sea level, for one thing. Our aquifers are so dry, I mean, you can't even get a commercial permit anymore in our area. So that's the real purpose. But in order to do that, they eliminated some of their worst constituents, like landfill leachate. And they said, hey, yeah, you got to stop pumping it to us. And first they decided they were going to put a pipe in from the landfill all the way over to the Atlantic site in Chesapeake, because that was going to continue to operate as it always had. And that ended up coming back where they thought it was going to be like 8 million. It come back at 28 or 29 million to get the line over there. So they said, that's not going to work. So we had been researching these evaporators, and we made a deal with HRSD that they would pay half if we put in this evaporator. So we just actually got the check back last week. We installed this evaporator to process our leachate. We disconnected the line going to their their treatment plant, and we're managing all of our leachate through this concentrator now. And when you go out to the landfill, you'll be able to see that. Leachate is garbage juice. It's collected and filtered on site and managed using this process. Landfill gas monitoring is an important part. This particular pipe, the large pipe, is a piece of pipe that goes down into the landfill. It's perforated, and then as you build the landfill up, you add pieces to it. The small pipe is a vacuum from the plant, and it's sucking gas out of the landfill, taking it back to the plant to be treated. Groundwater and stormwater monitor. This is I always get corrected by Mike on this. That's a groundwater probe, groundwater monitoring well, and we have gas probes that we check for landfill gas. These are strategically placed around the landfill, so we always are monitoring. If we get high readings on certain things, then it gets to reporting. And if there's any concern, you can go back and look at all of your monitoring wells, and you pretty much can pinpoint where your problem exists at, based on the flow of water, flow of groundwater, that sort of thing. The other thing we have are gas probes, which are monitoring wells for gas. And typically, when we have an issue with those, and this is a funny story, we've had a couple of times where we've had high readings of methane gas in those wells, and we this can't be the case. And usually they're over in the swamp somewhere. So we've done, they call them almost a DNA test of the gas to determine if it's the same kind of gas as in the landfill. And ended up what was going on was the peat in the swamp was degrading, and we were picking up the smell of the gas from the degrading the peat, and we ended up getting out of it altogether. But that's how strict this is. If the liner is leaking, typically you can pick up landfill gas in those probes that are outside of the waste boundary. Sustainability efforts, Tariva Renewable, they operate our gas plant. We produce natural gas, and we pump that into the gas line, the main gas line that goes through the middle of the landfill. We're doing mixed waste sorting now, and we're going to have more discussion on that in just a second. And then the leachate evaporation system makes it self-containing within the landfill. We can do everything right at the landfill now. Where used to, we had to take that off off the site. Some of the other things that we do is household hazardous waste disposal. We have household hazardous waste collection sites. We do special events for each of the member communities when they ask. We have a white goods program where we collect refrigerators. If you pick up refrigerators, a member community picks up a refrigerator, it still has refrigerant in it. We have people who have license to remove that refrigerant from those pieces of equipment. Now, used to, that was pretty lucrative deal, but now, with the scrapping system, you don't see very many of those in the landfill anymore, but we still have the program in case it does come up. Our tire processing facility, I'm going to show you a video in just a second of that. We have electronics recycling that we do. And here's a household hazardous waste disposal truck where we go out to the site and we pick up household hazardous waste and we transfer it in these trailers. We had about 10,000 customers annually, 132 regular events. That's at Chesapeake, Norfolk, and Franklin transfer stations. We have 12 special events a year. That could be more if we have people that want to have them, like Earth Day. If somebody wants to collect household hazardous waste on Earth Day, they call us, we'll get somebody out there. We're open 5.5 days a week at the regional landfill. So anytime you want to dispose of something, we've always got one of those sites open. We've taken in 20,000 gallons of liquid paint and other things like motor oil and cleaning products, and thousands of pounds of solids like batteries and pesticides. And all that is kept out of landfill. This is our tire shredder that we can do 1 million tires a year. This is a video that was done on, I believe it was Wavy TV did this. I guess it's not on there. Can you start it from there? All right, we're gonna move on. I don't want to hold you up on that. But this tire shredder, when we go to the landfill, you certainly can see that. We load the one end, and there's a conveyor that goes up, and it's a dual shaft shredder that just takes them and turns them into little pieces. So pretty neat. Agreements and contracts, we talked about this host and the good neighbor agreements with the city of Suffolk. The host agreements is what the host and good neighbor agreement with Suffolk is how we pay Suffolk for the use of the land. There's been a lot of discussion for years and years. Suffolk used to get free disposal, and then when SPSA redid itself, this host agreement came up, and this is all the things that go along with it. This host agreement is on our website. You can certainly feel free to take a look at it. The Public Procurement Act, I think that Brett has already gone over this. From $4,999, we don't need any quotes. From $5,000 to $29,000, we still get those quotes, but between $5,000 and $29,000, you have to have 3 quotes, and $30,000 and above has to be a formal bid that goes through the procurement process that we have outlined, and we have a procurement policy. It was updated in 21 to include a design build contract element, and that's still in place just like it is. Here is the code where you can look that up if you're interested. It's in your handouts. All right, some of the major projects we have going on is the flyover. We talked about this. I've already given you an update. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but this is a requirement that was part of our conditional use permit to build Cell 7 with the city of Suffolk, that we had to build this flyover because it was a very dangerous, if you've ever been out, I don't need to explain to you how dangerous this is. We had an employee who was killed crossing 58 5 years ago or so, Norman, going to work. And there's the number of accidents there, you can count them. They're once or twice a week. It's just a dangerous intersection, and this was a necessary thing. And Suffolk solved that, made sure that it got put in this conditional use permit, and we're almost complete with the construction of this flyover now. Here's the same picture you saw earlier today of the flyover, pretty much complete. And if you haven't driven by it, this would be the eastbound lanes here. This would be the westbound lanes. If you're coming eastbound, you would just pull off as like a shoulder lane here and get on, go over, and it would take you back into the landfill. This road here will actually tie back in to 58 so that any vehicle that's coming down 58 eastbound who wants to go westbound, all they do is go take the flyover, get right back on 58 going westbound. And this is critical because when we did the traffic study to determine the feasibility of building this, about 80% of the traffic that used that crossover was not people going to the landfill. They were people making a U-turn to go west onto 58. So this should solve a lot of those problems and make this a much safer corridor, and it's due to open in July for traffic and then a substantial completion in September. Cell 7 construction, I've talked a little bit about cell 7 construction. That's this cell here. And here's another picture of that. Already talked about it to some degree, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but it's pretty amazing watching this be built. It's a lot of work happening out there. And then I'm going to turn this over to Zach, and he's going to go through, talk to you about alternative waste disposal, what it is, what it means, and how it impacts us. Zach?
All right, this will be a little AWD crash course. I'm sure a lot of you know of it, maybe know more about it. Some of you are obviously in the process of making it happen, but got one. But there won't be a test at the end, so don't worry. But there is a test at the beginning. I got something for you here. What do you think? By weight, which material is most common in our waste? And we actually know this because we've done waste characterization studies on it. But I'm just curious if anyone has any thoughts. Feel free to chime in or keep it to yourself. I heard something over there. Plastic. Plastic is a guess. I won't tell you which one it is yet. Paper. We got paper in there. We got food waste. Okay, it's one of those three. It's definitely not metal, although metal is heavy. Luckily, we don't get a lot of it in the trash that is recycled. The winner is food waste, 22%. By weight of what people throw away in our trash is food waste. But close behind are things like plastic and paper, so those are good guesses. And this is true whether a community has curbside recycling or it doesn't. We've tested both and the numbers are shockingly similar. There's a lot of, first of all, food waste, things that are organic that gets thrown away, that doesn't have to go to the landfill, but recyclables too. Plenty of plastics, plenty of paper still escapes into the trash, and unfortunately a lot of disposal systems just have to either just straight incinerate these things or just throw them in the landfill and not be able to recover them. Moving on, based on our current disposal rates and procedures, how many years of capacity do Virginia's landfills have? So this is the whole state taking into consideration all the landfill capacity and then the amount of trash that we generate as a state. 40, I heard 40 and 20. It is definitely one of those. You've probably heard our landfill is good until 2060 at current disposal rates. However, the state of Virginia is more like 20 years. And I pulled this from a recent draft, I believe their draft solid waste management plan for the state. And just talking about as a state, our air capacity is definitely going down. As Dennis mentioned, in our region, there's not really any new landfills being made. And so that space that we have, we really just have to preserve. And that's definitely a statewide concern as well. Okay, so that's it for the test. You all did excellent. But those 2 points, those 2 questions are important going forward because they sort of run against each other. It means that a majority of our waste doesn't need to be landfilled, and yet we're running low on landfill space. And so those 2 things together just aren't really sustainable. And so that's why I saw this quote somewhere. I don't know who it was sourced from, but if no one has said it, we're saying it now, that trash is only a problem if we fail to see its potential. As we saw, there's a lot of potential in trash with organics, recyclables. So what are we doing about it? Well, we are now in Southern Hampton Roads putting forward AWD. And we might come up with a different name for AWD, but as a whole, AWD stands for Alternative Waste Disposal, and it's really just finding ways to dispose of waste beyond just landfilling it. And so that can include methods like recycling, incineration, anaerobic digestion, and composting. And so these are all a lot of things that people are trying to do separately on their own in their communities, but if we can do it as a region, certainly as a public body, we're going to take part in that. Dennis, I saw you.
Yeah, to that point, when we were going out for RFPs, AWD was the right terminology, because what we didn't want to do is we wanted to see what people had to offer, what was out there, what kind of creative things were going on. And we said alternative waste disposal, alternative to landfilling. So we didn't lock it into, say, incineration or mixed waste sorting. We said alternative waste disposal. Now we've made a selection. So we are definitely working with our with HDR and Zach to try to rebrand that to something like Smart Sort, something like that, because now we know what we're doing. Alternative waste disposal just is a kind of a generic term. So we're looking now to kind of drill down and identify what that alternative waste disposal that we selected was.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I think you'll see like AWD historically has meant this, but our AWD going forward is going to be different, and so we're going to have to find a way to let people know about that. So here's like the past AWD. It meant waste to energy. That was the Wheelabrator plant in Portsmouth that sold, burned off that trash and sold steam energy to the Navy, whereas now it's a little more advanced. We're using cameras, AI, air jets, and we're labeling that trash, separating that trash, and recovering those valuables. And I got a couple good videos here. I think some of you probably haven't seen some of them, of footage of the facility, so this should be interesting. But our AWD initiative specifically is our partner now, AMP, and we contracted with them. They began operations this year. They had that pilot facility that they were running out of Portsmouth for maybe 2 years, but their system uses cameras, robots, and AI to recover recyclables and organic materials. And that picture is taken from one of their monitors on site of what the system is seeing as those items come by on that conveyor belt. It's labeling them. It's doing more than just looking at the material. It's really checking for like moisture contents and is this a safe pick? Can I dispel the air to be able to project this forward without also affecting it and putting a contaminant in the line? So it's a really, really smart system. And in addition to touring the landfill and seeing what we got going on there, I highly recommend reaching out to us to coordinate a tour to see this facility as well. It's super state of the art. And so that contract spells out an overall waste diversion of 50%. And so that's going to be made up of 20% of all of our waste will be the form of recyclables, and 30% of our waste will be those organics that will be converted into biochar.
We're being very careful about these numbers. The contract guarantees 50%, but the numbers you heard today from the test were much greater than that. But we've always been very careful about not overstating what we're going to be able to do. What we realize is there's a certain amount of waste going there from certain location. When you change location, so is the makeup of the waste. Every community, and we know this before we went into it, every community is different, what type of waste you're going to see from the community. When we pull another community in, it could be more, or it could be less, depending on the type of waste that's coming into the facility. So while we know we're going to be able to do 50, it's very, very likely we're going to be in the 60, 65 range of diversion.
I just wanted to clarify one thing on the name. Bob Gardner earlier today was talking about the acceptance testing. He was referencing carbon sortation. You've heard Commonwealth sortation. The entity that we actually have the contract with is called Commonwealth Sortation. It's not carbon, but that's okay. It's Commonwealth Sortation. But you see here, AMP, that's the parent company, but that's sort of their brand. And Dennis, I don't know what the latest is, but I think they want to be called AMP, even though it's really Commonwealth Sortation. But It's the same thing, you know, so if you hear either of those, talking about the same party.
Yep, great clarification, yep. All right, this will be a little snapshot of AWD in a nutshell, this animation. I believe we've seen this before. No. Are you able to press play on the monitor? No.
Residential trash is
I can hear it.
residential trash is delivered to the sortation. Residential trash is delivered to the sortation facility. The process begins with all waste, including bagged and non-bagged items, being put on a large
we can
conveyor
move on.
belt.
I'm less concerned about this animation. Hopefully the next video plays, because we showed this at the board meeting last month, and we've been blasting this out on social media. If you do want to see it though, maybe it wouldn't hurt. We can definitely send some of these videos afterwards, Deborah. We can send out a little email with some of those videos that we missed. We'll definitely do that. So what does that mean? The big picture factors of AWD, we've been talking a lot about it, but really, like, what does it do? Well, these are the big achievements, that it's decreasing long-term costs to the region because we're able to double the life of our regional landfill. Instead of expiring in 2060, it's going to expire at the end of the century, more towards 2095. And that could go even further if, you know, there's plenty of time to come up with more strategies to reduce waste. And so this is one of those things that we're doing to tackle these challenges. And what it's doing is that it's increasing our recycling rates, because now all 1.2 million of our residents in Southern Hampton Roads are participating in a recycling system. And I'm sure all of you are aware of the challenges of current recycling programs and getting people to participate. And so now the choice is sort of taken away from people to participate, and when they throw something away, they are now participating. Here are some still images of before and afters taken from the facility. We have a typical waste stream coming up a conveyor belt on the left there, and you can even see in that recyclables. I see some plastic bottles even from back here. Going towards the middle picture, that is after going through an initial sort in the system, it's going to come out looking like a single stream recycling texture, I guess, there. So that they bailed that up because that's been going to a different facility, because this project is ramping up. They didn't quite have the technology to sort that on site. But after a first round of sort, all those materials that you see right there were basically taken from the trash, and then it'll go through an additional sort. Come July, I think they'll have the ability to do that on site at the Frederick facility, and you'll get bales looking more like the right image there, where it's just pure commodity, and you'll see all sorts of materials in there that were thrown away. I can't say for certain all these materials were thrown away in this case based on when the picture was taken, but you'll have saw blades mixed with all sorts of different containers representing that pure commodity. Okay, let's see if these ones will play. Let's try to hit it. All this was taken from the facility. This was a social media video. I can play this a couple of times, but that's just basically showing you before, during, and after. Really just seeing those materials change from the very dirty waste stream coming in and coming out. You're going to get something that looks like single stream recycling. And those air jets are moving so fast. We'll see in the next video. I mean, they're just firing off all the time, just sorting material. It looks very chaotic, but they are working. At a typical MRF facility, in terms of sorting, you're going to get a human being maybe being able to pick out 40 items per minute. that air jet's moving materials at a rate of 2,000 per minute. And at the AMP facility, when you go, you'll see, besides the two people standing at the front picking out those tangled items that might tangle or be too large, or maybe they're hazardous, they're going to be picking that out. After that, it's just machines just running. And those two people at the front swap out, I want to say every hour, so they're not standing there all day. They'll get on some equipment and start moving stuff around, and it's just a tag team effort that AMP does. So it's very well-run facility. This would be all 16 recyclables that the system is capable of detecting and separating. And this is available on our website. Just to sum it up, it's going to be pretty much all plastic types. When you look at the bottom of a plastic container, you'll see that recycling symbol with the chasing arrows and then a number in there. This can pretty much handle all except for the number 3 plastics, which are PVC. That's really not recyclable. I think there's some harmful chemicals in there, but pretty much everything else, even up to styrofoam, they're able to separate and find value in. A lot of people are impressed with this list. Yeah, go ahead, Dennis.
Just to be clear, the 16 items that are up here are the ones that are currently targeting. They could target anything that's recyclable, or so if there's new markets that come up, they can identify other things other than those 16 items. These were just part of the requirements of the contract. So we had a kind of the guardrail set up for them that you have to remove these items. And a typical recycling company would pull out PET, number 1 PET, cardboard and paper and metal. So you can see there's a lot more that we're able to target, and there's plenty more that could be targeted if it comes to market for it.
Yep. Certainly the facility is flexible and scalable. It's able to meet future challenges, we're hoping, with the sophistication of it. So thinking about 20% of what they're taking out is going to be recyclables, but a big part of this is also the biochar that comes from all that organic material. So that's going to be your food waste, your yard waste that's so prevalent in our trash. And there's a lot smarter people in this room than me that know a lot more about biochar, so feel free to chime in if I'm butchering it, but I don't think biochar is a new process. It's been around for centuries. It's basically a charcoal-like substance, and it's just putting things into a kiln, applying heat to it, and then that oxygen absent environment makes it so that there's just tremendously less methane emissions. It's trapping all those harmful things, that carbon, into that material. All the water vapor, or all the water in there, everything else is burning off, and so what you're left with is an image similar to that one, and that's sequestering all that carbon, and it has many uses. And so those uses that we're seeing are as an alternative for cement when you're creating concrete, and if you can prove sequestration, then you're also going to be eligible for carbon credits. And so that's going to be a big part of the long-term viability of this project is once we're able to sequester all of the biochar that's being made, well, you sell it off to those companies that are trying to be more carbon neutral by the purchase of the carbon credits.
One of the items about this project that really caught our eye was how they were handling organics. Most of the vendors both vendors who we were working with came back with a process to remove some recyclables. We feel like AMPS was the best option, but what really, I think, drove this project was the organics side of it. How are you going to handle organics? There's a lot of people out there doing a lot of things with organics that are risky, because we're not sure that they will work. But fortunately, on our selection committee, we had the chairman who was a chemical engineer and by trade, and he was able to do the research on this. And you may want to speak to the importance of the biochar in this project, because the biochar is what really made this project work.
Well, the other vendor had proposed anaerobic digestion, which is a wet process. It does the same thing biologically that the pyrolysis does using heat a little more quickly. The reason that we favored the Commonwealth sortation or AMP proposal was that the rotary kilns were far more simple. We thought, in our opinion, far more reliable. They were also far more compact. And that meant that AMP could actually co-locate on our Victory Boulevard site, which we determined we thought would have a great benefit, because this is a partnership, and being together and close and being able to work with each other rather than have a remote facility, we found to be a benefit. The other processes, the anaerobic digestion would also have produced a similar type of products, but it was very large, very wet, very messy, and it really hadn't been done on municipal solid waste. So we thought this had more, it was simpler and had a lot higher probability of success. The biochar is essentially carbon. As Zach indicated, it can be an additive to concrete. In the early days, the first few years of our proposal, of our contract, we're going to landfill it, but after that, it'll be up to AMP. They'll have to find uses for it, and they'll be disposing of it. So basically, it takes a lot of carbon, a lot of CO2 off the environment that would otherwise be there if we were, say, just to incinerate it. So we're looking forward to this process. The rotary kilns, again, are tried and true, and they're simple, and they're going to be on our facility. So we, like I say, we're looking forward to that about 3 years. Don't like time passing. When you get old like me, you don't want time to pass too fast, but I really can't wait to see how this all comes out in the next few years.
Yeah, the biochar component is, I feel like, the secret sauce to this process. So thank you for your expertise on that. And almost finished up here. All of this is going to be visible on our website. We're creating a dashboard, and we're going to be reporting those key findings about recycling and diversion coming out of the AMP sortation facilities. Those are just some quick screen grabs of example data that people will be able to see. We'll probably end up soft launching this and giving some links to you all to view it as those numbers are coming in, and then a little later make a formal press release about it and announcement for the public to view the site. And so this will be updated every month. And the timeline here, really just to focus on 2026 is all about the Frederick Boulevard facility in Portsmouth. And then there'll be a couple years until we can start to get the Victory Boulevard facility online. And so we're thinking 2028 to 2029 is when that'll be fully online. And that's it. That's it. Any questions about that? All right, thank you.
This is exciting. This is an exciting time for SPSA. We're doing a lot of really creative work. I'll tell you that there's been articles in the Wall Street Journal, Fox News, Fox Business News was at the facility on Frederick Boulevard Friday a week ago. They broadcasted live there all day long. I've been in contact with just this week. Jacksonville, Florida is trying to do the same thing we're trying to do, and they're looking for advice on how to go about doing it. I've had calls from San Jose, California, Minneapolis. There are all kinds of places to call and say, hey, we've been following this project. We're excited about it. Can we talk to you all? So we're talking to a lot of people. We're speaking at a lot of events. This is on the radar of everybody in this business across the whole United States, and that's the truth. I can't believe the way it's taken off and all that's going on, putting SPSA on the map. So in conclusion, there's just a few things I want to go over with. The website, this is a resource that you can always go to. we keep this updated. That's one of Zach's responsibilities, to make sure that this information on our website is up to date. He does a really good job of that. So use that website. It has all kinds of resources in terms of use and support agreements, host agreements, contracts. You want to know about it, you can find it on our website. And one of the things that we are trying to do with the website, and Zach talked about it briefly, was that the transparency piece. What we've learned is that nobody has any reliability on recycling. They think recycling is just smoke and mirrors, that nobody's really recycling. They're just picking up our trash and they're putting it in the landfill. And it's made it very tough to get citizens on board with what we're trying to do. They're saying, yeah, this is just another way to make us spend more money. That's not it at all. We're out talking to the communities. But what we realize is we've got to rebuild that confidence with our member communities, the citizens in our member communities about recycling. And that's what Zach is working on every day. SPSA staff, the contact information in the manual. I've already introduced most of them. There might be a few that are missing here that are still in the manual. But if you need anything, get in touch with me and I'll get in touch with staff and we'll work with you however we can. The chairman, the executive committee, and all the board members, remember, you can only have 2 at a time when you meet. I laugh about this because I know that Brett was just joking. After the meeting, we had 2 or 3 people standing around talking, 2 or 3 board members that were just chatting after the meeting. He says, y'all got to split up. This is a meeting. You're holding a meeting here. But that's just, it's all in fun. It's serious, but we do it all in fun too. Brett Spain, our general counsel, he works for SPSA, and he can answer those questions. That he's already made it clear that he doesn't work for you individually, but he can work for anything that has to do with SPSA. He can work with us on it. I want to go over a couple of expectations. And first of all, we ask that the board pay attention. I know that everybody has a busy schedule, and I understand it. Believe me, my schedule's busy too. And I understand that you got to take calls sometimes. But if you're here, try to pay attention if you can. Ask questions. We want you to ask questions. I think we get the most value when we dialogue, not me standing up here or one of my staff members standing up here talking to you. I want to hear what you're thinking, what's on your mind. Raise concerns. If you have a concern, raise a concern. Sometimes we don't even realize it's a concern, and we have board members that do that, and we'll work through it. If we're doing something that you're concerned about, we need to hear about it because it's probably inadvertent, or maybe we hadn't thought about that. So we encourage you to raise concerns. Contribute your expertise. Everybody on the board has a different expertise. We have lawyers, we have city managers, we have engineers, we have accountants, you name it, we've got it on the board. And we like to hear from you what your area of expertise is. Maybe you don't feel comfortable if you're an accountant talking about alternative waste disposal and pyrolysis and what all that means. But when you get to the finance part, you can add a lot to the conversation. Be involved. Don't hesitate. We want you to be involved. Share your expertise. And report back to your communities. You know, we've always had a problem with working here, but when we're trying to get back to the communities, it's tougher. It's a tougher sell. You got to talk to your communities. You are appointed by your community. You're appointed by your boards and councils. Talk to them. Whoever it was that you know on the board, you didn't just get appointed because nobody knew you. Somebody knows you. Talk to them about what we're doing and communicate that. I'll be going around to each one of the councils here over the next couple of months, talking to them again about where we are, keeping them up to date. I want you to be there. I want you to be a part of that. So what you can expect from me and my staff. First of all, we're going to communicate. Sometimes I get beat up because I communicate too much, talk too much, and I know that. But what I want to make sure of is that you all are informed. You will never leave here not being informed of what's going on. If that happens, then I failed. So we take a lot of pride in our communication with our board members. We're transparent. We tell you what it is. If it's bad, we're going to tell you it's bad. If it's good, we're going to tell you it's good. We're going to be honest and we're going to be transparent with each of you. We're going to be thorough as we can. Sometimes we don't always meet that, but we're doing the best we can. Oftentimes we're on a short kind of a short leash of, we find out something on Tuesday and we got to bring it to the board on Wednesday. We may not be as thorough on that as we should be, but we're going to try to be transparent, communicate the issues. Sometimes you may not be as thorough as you want to be, but we try. And we're going to be respectful. You have a difference in opinion. We're not going to always agree, and I'm not a yes man. If I don't agree with you, we're going to tell you what my opinion is, and then as we make a decision as a group, we're going to move forward together, even if it's not what I think. But you should expect me to tell you what I think in a respectful way. We're going to be diligent, always. And we're going to open and eager for suggestions. And I think if we can all do this, we're going to continue to make SPSA a better place and a better organization for our communities. So with that, I know it's been a long day. I appreciate your attention, but if there are any questions or comments, or staff is here, we'll be glad to talk to you about those now. Bring them up. Anybody got any questions? Was today helpful to new members and some older members? Okay. All right, Mr. Chairman, I want to turn it back over to you.
Well, if there's not any other business to be brought before the board, not seeing any, then this meeting is adjourned.